Time is 7:05. It's the Water Pollution Control Authority special meeting. Today is Monday, June 19th, 7:05 in the council chambers. We will start off tonight with a public hearing, 2023-2024 sewer service fees and rates. Sheila, roll call.
Vice Chairman Sakala.
Here.
Chairman Crisati.
Here.
Commissioner Despard. Here. Commissioner Finger is absent. Commissioner Hopkins.
Here.
Commissioner Ludwig.
He went to the restroom.
Okay. Commissioner Mangini.
Here.
Commissioner Nelson.
Here.
Commissioner Pisner.
Here.
Commissioner Santinella. Still downstairs.
He's absent.
And Commissioner Ungary.
Here.
So 8 are present and 3 are absent.
The following notice of public hearing was published in the Hartford Courant on Friday, June 9th, 2023. Town of Enfield legal notice. The Enfield Water Pollution Control Authority will hold a public hearing in the Enfield Town Hall Council Chambers, 820 Enfield Street, Enfield, Connecticut, on Monday, June 19th, 2023. The time now is 7:07, to allow interested residents an opportunity to express their opinions regarding the proposed sewer service fees and rates for fiscal year 2023-2024, dated the 6th day of June, 2023. Sheila M. Bailey, Town Clerk. The announcing of the ground rules for the public hearing. There is no time limit, but I do ask that each person not take up too much time, so that everyone will have an opportunity to speak. After each person who desires and has had one chance to speak, I shall permit those individuals who desire a second chance. After those individuals who desire to speak a second time, I shall permit them to desire a third, fourth, etc. Please refrain from personalities. Is there anybody that would like to approach the council regarding the proposed sewer fees? Second time?
Karen LaPlante, 166 North Maple Street. I've become a regular at these public hearings for the sewer plant, and I just want you to rewind and see what I've said over the last 5 or 10 years. You guys got to learn how to set rates. You have to figure out why you're setting the rates. And I did show up at the meeting downstairs, and I heard a little bit of the discussion, but you've provided the public with no information on these rates, why you're setting them, how you're setting them. People scream when their power company rates go. You're a public utility. You're a utility. You're supposed to explain to people why you're raising rates, why you're keeping them the same. There's hearings that public utilities have to go through, and you guys provide barely any information to the public. And it's very disappointing, and it's a big budget, and there's a lot of money that comes in, and even when you look at the budget book, you can't even tell how much revenue is coming in, where the numbers are, because it's all blended in with everything else, even though there's a couple separate pages for WPCA. So I think you should start running this as utility, and I've said that time and time again, and I think you need to keep it separate from council information. Anytime you discuss water pollution control, it should be under the authority, not under the town council. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there?
Hi, my name is Robert McDonald, 56 Lake Drive, Enfield. I got this paper when we first did the sewer tax. This is a while ago, and so I was looking it over, and my rate now is $85 per quarter. I live by myself in an 850 square foot house. My neighbor down the street, 3 times the size, family of 4, $85. Okay. And when this came out, I asked if I could get a meter to meter my water. And they said, no, you can't get this. But on this paper, it says that I could get a meter, but I would have to pay a $50 charge to have the meter read. Okay. And then it just says, well users will be charged quarterly based on the average consumption by the user's classification. Residential and small, non-residential, 16,000 gallons per quarter. I'm not even coming close to that, and I'm lumped in with people, family of 4 that is using a ton of water, and I'm paying way too much for what I do. And I don't see why at my own cost, I'll install a meter and pay my fair share. So can I get a meter installed? Does anyone know that answer? It says it here that I could.
There's no back and forth.
Okay, all right. So that's my thing, and I really would like to level the playing field and just pay my fair share on my water usage. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Anne Marie Galdenzi, 1330 Enfield Street. Why? Why are the rates going up? That's what I want to know. Everything else is going up. Now this is going up. So I couldn't find any reason or documentation on why we need to raise the rates. Like you do in the budget, people have to say why they want more money. I think we need to hear that for this too. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to approach the council? Yes.
Evening, Angela Foss, 16 Crescent Beach Drive.
Oh, sorry, I pushed the button.
Oh, thank you. Now can you hear me? Angela Foss, 16 Crescent Beach Drive. I was going to write something before I spoke about this, but I figured if I just spoke to you as human beings, maybe it would be a little different than when I write a long speech. So I might have heard Councilor Nelson, talk about his concerns last time with the taxes going up. He read some impelling stories about people in the town of Enfield who are having difficult times. And, I just don't really understand. I just don't get it. Why are the taxes always going up? Why do we need more money? Why is it always more money on the back of the taxpayers? And as Councilor Nelson had said, there are a lot of elderly people in the town of Enfield. And you just heard a man speak who's on a well. That's a lot of money that he's spending being on a well. I mean, he's on a well. So I'm just going to ask you to please be human. It's time, guys. I've heard you guys, and I've heard you say things like, the previous administration has set us up. I've heard it from a lot of you. The previous administration has set us up. And you guys are dropping the ball big time. I don't know why. I don't know if you're being pushed. I don't know what's going on behind scenes. You guys do know what's going on behind closed doors. We don't. We're not privy to that. Please, I hear you have excess money. Decrease the sewer tax. Wouldn't that be a lovely thing for the town of Enfield taxpayers to hear that you decided on your own terms to actually decrease it? And that's it.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to speak tonight? For a second time? Third? Fourth? Okay, I declare public hearing closed. Thank you. All right. Okay, next on the agenda is the approval of meeting minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from the May 16th?
So moved.
Counselor Mangini, and a second.
Second.
Deputy Mayor Scala, all in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? We have one abstention and 8-1. Okay. All right, do I have a motion to approve the minutes from the June 6th meeting?
So moved.
Okay, Counselor Mangini, and second by Counselor Ungary. All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, once again, 8 in favor, 1 abstention. The October 3rd, do I have a motion to approve the minutes from the October 3rd meeting?
So moved.
Counselor Mangini, and a second by Counselor Ungary. All in favor? We have 8 in favor, and abstention be 1. Once again, 8 in favor, 1 abstention. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from the December 19th?
So moved.
Counselor Mangini, and a second by Deputy Mayor Sakala. All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Looks like we have 9 in favor this time. And the minutes from the June 5th. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from the June 5th meeting, 2023? Counselor Mangini, and a second by Counselor Ungary. All in favor? Unanimous, 9-0 in favor. Okay, item 3 is the resolution adopting the 2023-2024 sewer service fees and rates. The resolution, whereas in accordance with Chapter 103, Section 7-255 of the Connecticut General Statutes, the Enfield Sewer Authority held a public hearing on June 19th at 7:05 in the council chambers, 820 Enfield Street, hearing comments on the proposed 2023-2024 sewer service fee schedule. Therefore, be resolved, the Enfield Sewer Authority does hereby adopt the sewer service fee schedule attached as Attachment A, prepared by the Town Manager's Office.
So moved.
Counselor Nelson, and a second by Counselor Mangini. Discussion. Counselor Nelson.
Okay, couple things. First thing, we're not here under the current council. We're here as the WPC Authority. My next one, and the gentleman has a great point about being on a well. And we just came from a meeting, and this whole thing is so confusing, and how to set a rate and size of the water main. And I'm going to publicly apologize to the Tallaritas, because after seeing this tonight, I understand what their complaint is, and I don't blame them. Everybody gets a different charge on the size water meter that they have in their house, but we're charged by water usage. So what's it matter what size meter you have? If you use more water, you pay more, and that's how it should be. I'm in favor of getting rid of the flat fee altogether. So if the gentleman or anybody who is on a well, if I can put a deduct meter on my house because I have sprinklers, and I can call in every quarter and tell them how much water I used for my sprinkler systems, they will deduct that off of my sewer bill. And I'm talking a difference of $400 a quarter by doing that. So if the town entrusts residents to call in their own deduct meter, and the resident puts the meter on their house at their cost, they got to get a building permit for it like we all did, why can't somebody with a well put the same deduct meter on their well line, monitor how much water they used from the well and call in that number so they have a real actual number of the amount of water they use. Now, to a lot of well users, that may not be too beneficial for them because the gentleman's right. A family of 4 may exceed that flat fee that they get. But he should have that option available to him as a single person in the home. And this is another thing by the proposal we're seeing tonight is to increase the flat fee for the water meter. We don't put water meters in the house, the water company does. So why are we getting more money for a flat fee? We're getting as bad as the utility company. I have to agree with Mrs. LaPlante that, they charge $60 or something just to put the electric meter on your house. You can buy the power from anywhere you want, but they get you now in deliveries and their flat fee for the meter. Well, we're no different, and I have a super hard time doing this. When we first implemented the sewer fee, it was so we could get federal funds and state funds to help get the projects we needed fixed. We were $4 million in the hole 4 years ago. $4 million. In 4 years, we're $2.5 million to the positive in the account today. So, yes, our sewer pump stations need to be upgraded. I'm not doubting that. But they've been running to the ground for the last 40 to 60 years. We can't expect the residents to fund to replace all these pump stations in 4 or 5 years. We need to budget it over time, like we do CIP and stuff. And if we've swung $4 million in the negative to 2.5 to the positive in 4 years, that's $6.5 million on the current rate. How much more money do we want to make every year off of this? So if we continue at the current rate, in another couple years, we can do a pump station. And then a couple years after that, do another one. And we need to stay on top of it and stop stealing the money for other projects. That was another reason that we separated the sewers out. So I don't support the increase whatsoever. I think WPC is slowly getting back on their feet. We have a brand new water pollution control plant down there. It's beautiful. The town did a great job. But I think the council, this council and previous councils have done wonders turning that around and getting us in the positive. And I think we're doing good. We're still in the positive. We're going to keep going in the positive. So why do we got to increase it? I do not support the increase. And I'm going to give everybody the option to speak, but then or somebody, I believe, is going to make a motion that we amend it and we stay with the current rates that we have today. And we've had discussions about having more meetings with WPC, the authority, and one of the first topics I will bring up is this gentleman's situation, because he should be allowed to put that meter on his well line to help him keep his costs down. And that's why I'm dead set against raising flat fees, because the elderly residents, they can choose not to flush their toilet every other flush or something to save money. When you force a flat fee down people's throat, it's just another tax. That's all it is. And there's no way to save. So that's where I stand on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Scala.
Thank you. Just one point of correction. What is proposed this year is not an increase in the flat fee, just an increase in the user fee, because that was one of our discussion points. So what is being proposed is just an increase on the usage-based fee. The flat fee of $39 is still the same as it was the previous year. I am in favor of trying to keep them for this year as they were the previous year. Don't know if it's going to work. I don't think it's something that the town can sustain year after year, but I do understand that it's something that we can try, and that perhaps since we do have a surplus and we can manage that money and hopefully have a WPCA commission on its own or more meetings or something, because I do think that there is a lot of different ideas that sit up here that I think if we all put our heads together or a commission together, they might be able to really manage this in a better, more effective way. So what I would do is I would make a motion to amend attachment A to the resolution and amend where it says build water consumption less than 20,000. I would amend 419 back to the 360 per 1,000 gallons. And build water consumption over 20,000, I would amend 627 per 1,000 gallons back to the 539. Those are the current numbers as far as what I have. Everything else on this attachment is the same, I believe, as it was last year that I looked. And obviously, that same amendment would go down to the next section where it said significant users with sewer meters. The 627 would come back down to 539.
Second that motion.
A motion on the floor by Deputy Mayor Sakala, and that would be to, under the build water consumption of less than 20,000 gallons, amend that to $3.60, and greater than 20,000, amend that to $5.39. And also the base rate charge would stay the same. And that was seconded by Councilor Despard.
I just want
yeah,
to
go
make
ahead.
sure somebody double checks my numbers to make sure that is what it currently is. I'm almost positive it is.
To my knowledge, those are
Yeah.
correct
Yeah.
figures.
It's in our packet, too.
John? Just double checking on those figures.
Yeah, no discussion on the amendment.
And one other thing I just want to mention, just going along with meter size. You know, the 5/8, the 3/4, the 1 inch, we're talking about residential meter sizes. I think this commission will make a concerted effort and to keep that a flat fee also at some time in the future, but I just want to put that out there to everybody. Councilor Pisner.
I just had one question.
Oh, well, hold
I'm
on.
sorry.
We just have to have discussion on the amendment. Any discussion on the amendment? Councilor Mangini.
Yeah, I think it's a great amendment. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Sakala. I certainly will support the amendment. I do want to emphasize the fact that for years we've been presented with the opportunity to form a commission to look at our usage and to make appropriate changes and corrections. Unfortunately, that has never come to fruition. So I would encourage council to seriously think about going down that road. So maybe we can work out some better formula. Maybe, we can make the equity a little better for the residents. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Despard, and then we'll go to Councilor Pisner and Councilor Hopkins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yep, I think it's a good motion, and to second what Councilor Mangini said, I think this needs to be its own separate commission. And it was said in another discussion that gives away our taxing authority. I don't agree. Well, it doesn't, because what would end up happening is we would still have a final say. So we would just have people unscrewing this situation for us, pardon my French, and then we could make decisions from there rather than us, up here running around like chickens with our head cut off, not knowing what we're doing. And, this is something that should have been done a very long time ago. I'm sorry it hasn't. It's something we really need to make the commitment to do now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Pisner.
I'm agreeing with the amendment. I think we should stay where it is. I would have loved to seen it come down. I disagree with the commission. We are the Water Pollution Control Commission. We are the elected officials that watch over the taxes in this town. That is our job. So I think we need to meet more often.
But others spoke about it.
Well, the other one spoke on it. Okay, but I am in agreement with the amendment.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Hopkins?
I support the amendment. I'll come back for the original motion to speak a little bit more, though. Thank you.
Okay, all right, well, thank you. Okay, Counselor.
Again, I take it as a friendly amendment as well. I appreciate it. Both Councilor Nelson and Deputy Mayor Sakala and I will comment on the commission after this. But I appreciate it's a friendly amendment. Thank you.
Okay, all right, at this point, I would like to have a vote on the amendment. So by raise of hands, all in favor? Unanimous, 9-0 in favor of the amendment. Okay, discussion now.
Again, thank you for the amendment, so I'll move on. And again, I think it's clear. The charter gives the council taxing authority, okay, which is the Water Pollution Control Authority, which is we are. We have to meet more often. Ask yourself this, in any level of government, when we create a separate commission that has taxing authority, do the taxpayers ever make out? The answer is no. I don't care what your political persuasion is, it never works out that way. It's up to the town council to manage it, and quite frankly, we have. All right, so I mean, we're not into a situation. We were in a situation about 6-7 years ago when we were in a huge deficit, as mentioned earlier. We managed out of it. We went after the money the state owed us, which we had to go to bonding council to get. If you can imagine, they actually contractually owed us $2.5 million, but we actually had to go to bonding council to get the money. We worked with our state reps. They helped us out. We got the money. We actually went after folks who didn't pay who never paid. You'd be surprised if taxpayers who never paid their sewer fee, worth about $1.5 million over a few-year period. So it's manageable. This is manageable. We have a brand new plant that's up. It's running. And that's the reason why, again, a little history, why we had to go to the quarterly fee. We needed a revenue stream to make sure we can get the improvements that needed the taxpayers approved. Again, a taxpayer-approved project that needed, again, to make sure we can, when it's up and running, we can manage it. I think as we move forward, I agree, it's time to lessen the quarterly charge and have it back towards the usage. If folks who use water, you should pay for it. Very simple. And I think that's why we're where we are. I mean, I don't want to do revisionist history, but it's funny how people just keep forgetting how we got here. And the situation has been managed. It's up to the town council / Water Pollution Control Authority to manage it. I am 100% against giving up taxing authority. Don't run for the town council if you don't want to have taxing authority. I mean, I'm sorry, it's terrible for the taxpayers. I don't care. I mean, when we bring in experts to do anything, eventually, again, look at your utility bills. And so I think this is manageable. I appreciate the friendly amendment. I will support this because it's basically a pass to your current charge. There are other issues we can work on, and we will. But I think at least it keeps this level of your taxation at a pass for this year. So I support it, and again, thank you for the amendment.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Hopkins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So as the WPCA, we have a lot of responsibility. This system is huge. It touches everybody in the town. It's also a very expensive system to run. I think, unfortunately, we've maybe fallen down a little bit, both this council or this WPCA and prior WPCAs, in not having the not taking the opportunity to actually meet more often and think about these things. I know we've had some prior discussions in committee meetings about creating a commission. Well, what's the reason for that? I understand Councilor Ludwig's concerns about ceding some of the WPCA's authority. I think there's a way to do that in which the WPCA or the council meeting as the WPCA still has a final check on that. But really the goal is to have more eyes on the system. There are a lot of niche issues like pipe size or well. I've had a lot of people talk to me about that. But the biggest thing is, are we being planful with the system? Are we setting rates because we're thinking 20 years ahead, or are we setting them because we get here, we see that the literature in front of us maybe a week before and just kind of rush? And that's unfortunate. I'm not sure that's happened here today, but it's a concern. How do we protect against that? Well, if every town councilor sitting as a WPCA member was super invested in this huge system and spent a lot of time on it, I think we could get there. I don't think that's happened historically based off of conversations I've had with prior town councilors and residents. I think the way that we create a sea change here is create a commission with the WPCA having the final authority, but fill it with really motivated people. I know there are some people in the crowd who are fairly motivated on this issue. I know there are many other people in the community, but the current system, it's not as optimized as it could be. It's not as perhaps equitable as it could be. It does pay the bills, but maybe just barely. We recently had a sewer main collapse right in front of Town Hall. I really worry about what other lurking problems there are in town, that costs a lot of money. So I'm glad that we're not raising this here, but we need to figure out a way to pay for the system, but also do it in the most equitable way possible. Thank you.
Councilor Mangini?
Thank you. To Councilman Hopkins' point, thank you, Councilman Hopkins. We, the council, are definitely the taxing authority. We make policy, but realistically, we don't have the time, we don't have the knowledge, we don't have the necessary tools to make these very important decisions on the water pollution control. So it is apparent that what we talked about for years and years and years, that we should have a small committee or commission set up to report back to council, as we do with public safety, as we do with economic development. Then we will all be much more informed to make better decisions, more responsible decisions to present to the consumer, to our residents, because we are in a situation now where, as you know, my fellow councilors pointed out, we're stuck and we really need to make things right. So we're not trying to take taxing authority away from any member of the council, but rather enhance our abilities to perform better our duties. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Pisner?
So I'm going to repeat what I said before. When you get elected as a counselor, it is your job to learn about every aspect of the town, and it's your job to make the time. Unlike the Safety Committee, unlike Economic Development, this is chargeable to the residents. So I still feel that we need to meet more, and it's our responsibility to the residents to learn about this and ask the right questions. I also have one other question through the mayor to the town manager. I'm not seeing a resolution number on the top of this, and I'm just curious why there's not a resolution number. Is there a reason? Because
Councilor? Yeah.
Excuse me, that resolution number gets assigned after the meeting when the minutes are done.
Councilor Ungary and then Councilor Despard.
Okay, I just wanted to say I didn't originally support the original amendment. Our taxes are going to be going up this year, and we didn't need another tax increase. But this amendment will at least keep it the same, so I'll support that.
All right, thank you. Councilor Despard.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the reason why the sewer system is so messed up in the first place is because this council has failed to be the water pollution control authority, and we definitely need more help. And there's nothing wrong with asking for more help. So, and you'll hear people talk about like this is a great system. We have a surplus. Well, you have a surplus anytime you take that much money from the residents for 4 years, you're going to have a ton of money. So the same people that don't want a tax increase to save teachers want to, I don't know, take a whole bunch of money for a sewer system because they don't know anything about it. It doesn't make sense. It's clear we need more help in this regard. I'm not afraid to ask for help in this regard. And so I think that it's clear we need a commission. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to make a couple of comments. I see you there. You know,
I have a right to respond to that.
well, and I will. I'm just putting it out there. First of all, everybody has their opinions and comments, and I know that a while back, and it probably was last year sometime, that we did make a concerted effort to state that we would look into having a water pollution control commission. And here we are a year later. Now we're still starting to talk about this. I appreciate everybody's opinions on this. This is, I think, something that we can discuss. I'll let you respond, but I think we're ready to move onward with the resolution. But so that'll be the last comment, and then we'll move on.
Again,
And I appreciate everybody's opinions.
we do know what
either
we're
way.
doing, and we're managing a very system with a budget, and, you know, because this council hasn't met, or other councils, that's not an excuse. Some councils did meet a lot and address this. We had presentations, they're all public information, you're more than welcome to go see. We actually did a nice presentation back, when we went from soup to nuts on why they had to go to the sewer fee when it came out of your taxes. So it's all out there, it's all public information, and it was done in the last few years. So it's not something that's been out there for, you know, and again, since we're going to make little statements here, we had to go to the sewer fee because, again, the state overused, because of the prisons, overused our sewer system. Well, unfortunately, the town didn't do a good job of maintaining it, and so we were going to get shut down by the state if we didn't fix the problems that needed to be fixed. That was one of the reasons why we had to go to a sewer fee to get it out of your tax bill, because then we could qualify for low-interest loans, which now we have a full building. So if we didn't know what we were doing, how did we get a $40 million building passed by the taxpayers? So the taxpayers approved that, by the way, okay? And, you know, again, if we're going to talk about, hey, let's talk about the budget. I mean, the taxpayers are overcharged $1.4 million this year. I don't care if you can say it goes to teachers, you can say whatever. 1.4 million is 1.4 million. That should have stayed in your pocket.
Okay, Sheila, roll call, please.
Vice Chairperson Sakala?
4.
Chairman Crisati?
4.
Commissioner Despard?
4.
Commissioner Hopkins?
4.
Commissioner Ludwig?
4.
Commissioner Mangini?
4.
Commissioner Nelson?
4 as amended.
Commissioner Pisner?
4.
And Commissioner Ungary.
4.
9 members in favor, none against.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Counselor Nelson, and a second by Counselor Mangini. All in favor? Unanimous? 8-0, 9-0. The meeting is adjourned. We're going to continue on. Good evening, everyone. As we move out of the water pollution control to our regular agenda, we have 3 public hearings that we need to handle first. The first up is the revisions to the Fair Rent Commission, followed by the annual submission to the state for the Neighborhood Assistance Act, and then the conveyance of the town-owned land. Once again, Sheila, we need a roll call for these public hearings.
Deputy Mayor,
4.
Thank you. Mayor Crisati?
Here.
Counselor Despard?
Here.
Counselor Hopkins?
Here.
Counselor Ludwig?
Here.
Counselor Mangini?
Here.
Counselor Nelson?
Here.
Counselor Pisner?
Here.
And Counselor Ungary.
Here.
9 members are present, 2 are absent.
Town of Enfield legal notice. The Enfield Town Council will hold a public hearing in the Enfield Town Hall Council Chambers, 820 Enfield Street, Enfield, Connecticut, on Monday, June 19th, 2023. The time is 8:42. To follow the interested residents an opportunity to express their opinion regarding the following items. The first one is the proposed amendments to the Enfield Town Code Section 2-151 through 2-157, inclusive the Fair Rent Commission. And then after that will be the second one, 2023 Neighborhood Assistance Act proposals, followed by the third one, the proposed sale of town-owned property in accordance with the requirements of the Connecticut General Statute S7-163E. The proposed parcels are 1 Church Street, 19 Church Street, 21 Church Street, 2 Chapel Street, 16 Pleasant Street, 17 North Main Street, 1 unidentified parcel that sits east of the 17 North Main Street parcel, and the paved area of 5 Church Street, which abuts 1 Church Street for site access. Information may be found in the office of the town clerk at www.enfield-connecticut.gov. Sheila M. Bailey, Town Clerk, dated June 6, 2023. Once again, announcing of the ground rules, there is no time limit, but I ask that each person not take up too much time so that everyone have the opportunity to speak. After each person who desires had one chance to speak, I shall permit those individuals who desire a second chance. After those individuals who desire to speak a second time, I'll permit them to speak until we are complete. Please refrain from personalities. And we are ready to go for the first public hearing. Is there anybody that would like to come up and talk about public hearing number 1? Yes.
Kelly Hemmler, 10 Hartford Ave. At the last town council meeting, June 5th, the vote for this public hearing was done improperly. Roll call was taken and called. The motion failed. A counselor who was in the bathroom came in and her vote was counted after the fact. Why have rules? You're not going to follow them. In regards to the proposed amendments to the Fair Rent Commission, we already have a Fair Rent Commission, and it is specific to who needs to be on it. Why reinvent the wheel? The current commission outlined in the town code has 2 landlords, 2 tenants, and 3 homeowners. Seems fair to me. By the way, the members should also be selected by the town council. This is your job, not the town manager's job. At the last town council meeting, Councilor Ludwig pointed out that the new policy was very vague, and the other side defending it, saying that that's what the state wants. It sounds like, Pelosi saying, let's pass the bill so then we can find out what's in it. You're all supposed to be looking out for Enfield residents, not the state. An improper vote, rushing another vague town code through sounds like there's something else going on. What happened to transparency? I feel like landlords are going to be targeted. They provide a very important service in the town, and without them, a lot of us wouldn't have places to live. It can't be one-sided. You can't chase them out, and they have the right to make a living. That's the way the world the world revolves around. So please do the right thing. Go back to the old, Fair Rent Commission and just fill it, and let's get on with it. Thank you.
Is there anybody else that would like to speak in regard to public hearing 1? Yep.
Angela Voss, 16 Crescent Beach Drive. So when it comes to rent, I know that at the last time when you guys decided to raise taxes, I sat here and I said to you, Jeff hadn't gone up in his rents in 10 years, which is an absolute 100% fact. And he had to go up on his rents last year. And to all of his tenants who are watching, I'm sorry, but you know this too. He had to go up in his rents again this year. 2 years in a row. He's never gone up in his rents. Why? Because of the taxes and the bills that you guys keep imposing on us. And trust me, the little bit of money he's going up in the rents is not covering his bills. Not at all. Oh, I did want to say something though. I wanted to make a big shout out to the Thompsonville Fire Department, all the people in Thompsonville Fire Department that showed up today at 22 Pleasant Street. There was a little fire started by somebody who didn't mean to purposefully start the fire, but they were amazing. They came right out, did their job. The truck showed up immediately and kept the building, just a little small part of the building got burned. So thank you so much for all of you. We do appreciate you and your very timely assistance. Okay, so back to this fair rent. So I applied to be on any commission at all. And I'm a landlord, and I never got a phone call to be on the commission. I did just check recently, and I did see all the vacant slots. So yes, we think that it should remain 2 landlords, 2 tenants, 3 people who are, impartial. I have already filled out that paperwork online, and I'm happy to be involved in that if chosen. But again, I would love to know who was even asked. I've come here a lot. I'm a landlord, and I know I didn't get a phone call from the town manager. So it would be probably much wiser for you guys, town council members, to be in charge of that, because somebody's dropped the ball, and I know it's not you, but I would love a list of all the people who have been invited to be on the Fair Rent Commission. I think that that's full disclosure. We should all know who those people were who were listed. So I did apply. I did ask to be involved. I'm happy to be involved. I've come here enough, and I know that you know that I'm very happy to be involved. But I want to make sure you guys understand all this, that, you can't have it both ways. You can't increase the taxes and increase spending and increase. I remember I sat here last year, and one of the things you were going to do was fix the bathrooms. It was going to cost $350,000, and it was all part of the tax increases last year. And I don't know if anybody's been in there recently, but it certainly has not been improved. If anything, there's duct tape on the closures for the women's bathroom. And I had said, why do you need $350,000 in the budget in the first place for this? But not only that, but the $350,000 that was in the budget, where did it go? Where is all this money going? Did you do everything that was listed? I know I'm off topic, but it's all about the same thing. It's all the same bundle. It's all Enfield control. And it shouldn't be that way. The more that you go up in taxes, all it does is hurt the little people. It really does. Thank you for your time.
Next.
Gretchen Pfeiffer Hall, 4 Summers Road. So I'm a realtor and a landlord, and so I've been involved with landlords and tenants, and as a landlord, I think that there should be criteria for who's going to be on the Fair Rent Commission, and I initially was going to say I don't have a problem with reducing it to 5 people, because I know that it's very difficult to get people to volunteer on boards, and I'm sure there's plenty of vacancies. But it's interesting to hear the last speaker say that she's willing to serve, and so perhaps there are other people who are willing to serve. But I do think that it has to have fair representation, and there should be at least 2 landlords and 2 tenants on this, and whether there be, if you do decide to go with 5 members, then at least 1 impartial person. But if it's possible to have 7 volunteers, then there should be additional 3 impartial people. I've never had the experience of anybody going before the Fair Rent Commission. I'm not sure how often they meet. I don't think there has been a lot of complaints, at least not that I'm aware of. So it doesn't seem like it's a commission that meets that often, so it's not a big burden for somebody to volunteer for it. So I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Lori, and then you're next.
Lori Longy, 1427 Enfield Street. I think the members should be town council approved and appointed, like all the other boards are done. This is an important board, and you should be the appointing body after reviewing the applications. I think the appointments should be equal, as it's been in the past, with 2 landlords and 2 tenants. I would personally be okay if there was 1 resident. But if 3 was the prior board, and I would be okay with that as well. But this is a statewide issue and not just an Enfield issue or mandate. I really think that we should be considering a multi-town fair rent board. And I do think that we need fair representation. And it's not just an Enfield issue. So if you're having a hard time getting people, you might consider, partnering up with another town and just spreading the burden so it would actually be very fair, because you might be hearing cases from other towns. And so I think that would just be a prudent thing to think about. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Jeffrey Kaplan, property owners in town, 101 Enfield Street, among others. We're housing providers here in Enfield, and we're heavily involved in the rental market. And regarding the revisions to the proposed Fair Rent Commission, I'd just like to echo the previous speakers that we would like equal representation between tenants and landlords. This is in the interest of protecting true fairness. Additionally, at the very least, I would encourage you to approve, make the final approval for any appointees that are made by the town manager. If there is no approval from the town council, it may reflect the narrow leanings of whatever town manager, whatever individual did appoint these people. The economy, market prices, the condition of the rental property, and other unique circumstances are all factors which must be considered in what could be treated as a fair rental increase by the housing provider. And input from many perspectives will produce the best results. Landlords are very aware of housing provider costs, local rental market prices, and standard procedure for what is safe and good maintenance for a rental house. Housing provider appointees could also bring insightful feedback to Fair Rent Commission respondents who may be falling short in these standards, such as safety standards or possibly even engaging in unethical business practices. So these individuals would be boots on the ground and aware of how the rental market runs. Compared to other jurisdictions in Connecticut, rent in Enfield remains relatively affordable and inexpensive. An imbalanced Fair Rent Commission could be harmful to affordability in town because it could be inadvertently adding governmental risk to housing providers who are already facing increasing costs, as well as unfriendly state legislation and real estate market uncertainty. Additionally, the proposed revisions, they remove any mention of complaint investigators. So the questions would be, would it be up to the appointees on the Fair Rent Commission to do the investigating themselves? Would there be just the evidence that the complainants and the respondents bring forth at the meeting be taken based on its own? Or would there be another third party engaging with investigating whether or not this is in fact fair? So again, we just mainly support equal representation on the Fair Rent Commission between landlords and tenants, as well as council approval for the appointees. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to come forward? Yes.
Yes, it's on. Paul Januszewski, 8 Ernest Street, Enfield, Connecticut. Some of you know me from my previous life. Retired 3 years ago after 45 years of service to the Enfield Fire Department here. And I got into my full-time gig now, which is landlording and taking care of multiple properties here in town. My wife and I have fixed up a couple of properties in Thompsonville and turned them into some prize rentals, I think. I think my tenants think so as well. I certainly have had no problem filling them each time they've gone empty, which isn't all that often, thankfully. But I'm surprised to be here. I thought my duty was done. I also serve as president right now of the Enfield Landlord Association. We represent almost 300 housing units throughout north central Connecticut, not just Enfield, but Windsor, Granby, Suffield, Somers, and a number of other communities. But right now we represent a good number of housing units. And I've been very busy since January when the legislative session opened, because we got hammered. The landlords got hammered again this year. This is my third year working almost full-time from January through to the end of the session. And this year was a long session, as you know. We got over in beginning of this month. And we worked hard on a number of different pieces of legislation that came out that were really coming after property owner rights and business rights, and would have been detrimental to our existing tenants and our ability to maintain our properties the way they were. And I thought that was over on May, whatever the first Wednesday in May was when the session closed, when then I got a phone call and I got a notice actually about a town council meeting that had been called to deal with rent commissions. So I was involved anyways last year when Public Act 2230 was being moved through the legislation, and it really didn't impact our board here, our association here and so forth, because I knew that Enfield already had a fair rent commission. We've had one since 1970. So when I saw this piece of legislation coming through, I really wasn't all that worried about it. The only change that they did with this legislation doesn't really affect Enfield at all, so I don't know why we're here. Some minor nuances with the legislation that some with our current ordinance could be done, but we really don't need to be here because the Public Act that was passed makes it mandatory for any community with more than 25,000 residents must now have a fair rent commission. That's not what it said before last year. Well, that doesn't apply to Enfield. We have already had a fair rent commission. So although we have more than 25,000, we had already done our job back in 1970. The problem in Enfield is that commission hasn't done anything in a number of years. There's been a number of vacant positions, and I will step up and serve in that position, on that commission if I'm allowed. Can I? Now that I'm retired, I have a little bit more time, I think. But having been a landlord for 14 years now and dealing with the stuff that we've done, maintaining the properties and dealing with a number of different tenant types, I think there's a lot that we could bring forward. And again, not sure why we're here, but we are. There are a few things that could be done. Also, because of the legislation, one of the things that many landlords did this year was we attended a Fair Rent Commission seminar, and we were handed a toolkit for fair rent commissions, which is a part and parcel with some information that the state of Connecticut put out. I would encourage that we get together and look at that if we're going to propose any changes to the ordinance, because there's some good information in there that I think we could build into our ordinance. Our existing ordinance has a few little things that need to change, but not a lot. One of the things that doesn't need to change is the makeup of the commission. The makeup of the commission that we have right now is actually what's recommended by many agencies and the state of Connecticut itself in the guidance that they publish. They recommend 7. 5 is good. 7 is better. Bigger is not always better than that because, as we've said, 7 is hard. It can be hard to get more than 7 together. But one of the things that's critical to any commission like that is that there's fair representation on both parties, and there's people that sit on that commission that have experience serving on each side that can bring information to the table. So I highly encourage you, urge you, and ask that you leave our existing ordinance as it is, and we work together to clean up the language in it that needs to be cleaned up to satisfy some of the changes. And really the only technical changes that need to be made are references to state statute and state regulation that has changed since 1970 when the ordinance was first drafted. So there's some numbers and some nuances like that that need to be changed, but not a whole lot else. And I would also highly recommend that that we get this commission filled, get the people sitting on it, and we make sure that we maintain the fair and equitable representation on that panel. To do anything else would be a disservice to the town. It would establish the very real possibility of a strongly biased commission that would only do more harm than good for anybody that's trying to either provide housing in this town or rent housing in this town. I thank you very much for your time. Have a great night.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else that wants to come for the first time for public hearing number 1? Second time? Third? Okay, I declare public hearing number 1 is concluded. We will move on to number 2, 2023 Neighborhood Assistance Act proposals. Is there anybody who would like to come forward for public hearing number 2?
This will be quick. Karen LaPlante, 166 North Maple Street. I think a lot of people out there don't understand what the Neighborhood Assistance Act is. It's a tax credit program. So if I can just take a moment to explain it. If you're a Connecticut corporation, if you're in Enfield, if you work for a Connecticut corporation and they pay Connecticut corporation taxes, those taxes can come back to Enfield directly through this program. So the applicants solicit the tax credits from Connecticut corporations, and they say, bring your money back to Enfield. It comes directly from their taxes. They don't even, they pay it directly to the nonprofit after they've gotten a certificate from the Revenue Department. And there's a time frame in it, so it's a little bit difficult to understand. We try to send things out to people so they understand. The big corporations all take advantage of this program. Last year, I believe, there was $5 million. It was capped at $5 million in tax credits for this program, and nonprofits all over the state offer, go for this program. And Channel 61 uses their maximum number. I think the maximum number is like 150,000 in tax credits you can take in any given year, and then they have to pay the rest of their taxes. But that money can come directly to a nonprofit that's applied for a Neighborhood Assistance Act, and it's very helpful to the nonprofits that have applied. So I would urge anybody, if they have any questions, they can contact me or any of the applicants that have applied. They'll be more than happy to explain it further. But thank you to all those corporations that have helped us in the past, and I hope you'll help us again. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to speak in regard to public hearing number 2? I declare public hearing number 2 concluded. Moving on to number 3. Public hearing number 3. Is there anybody that would like to speak in regard to public hearing number 3?
Callie Hemler, 10 Hartford Ave. A request for quote for this property went out last year. It was very specific on what we were looking for. A company came up with a plan, and the town council unanimously agreed that it was a good plan. So it was exciting last year. The company came back earlier this year with a totally different plan. The minority party on the council recognized that there were big problems with the new plan. The mixed-use aspect was abandoned, more housing units were added without realistic plan for parking, and it really felt like a bait and switch. The majority party's attitude is, this is better than nothing. You deserve less. You should be happy with it. Well, I know none of you live in Thompsonville. I do. And it is a big deal. The parking situation, I know there's some sort of solution for it, but it is a big deal, especially in the wintertime. And I just don't appreciate the attitude that, you know, somebody just comes along and says that they'll build something, anything, it doesn't matter. It feels like the 1970s, where urban renewal came in, they took out a whole bunch of our historic buildings, never rebuilt them, and Thompsonville's never been the same. So I'm asking you not to rush this. There's no reason to rush it. If this vendor is not exactly what everybody was looking for, then look for another one. This doesn't have to be the end all. So I'm just asking you to put the work in, please. This is my neighborhood. It's not your neighborhood. It's my neighborhood, and it's important. And there's a lot of good people that live there, and we don't like to be treated like second-class citizens. And I'm asking you to stop. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to come and speak on public hearing number 3? Second time?
Karen LaPlante, 166 North Maple Street. I'm not speaking on behalf of the Conservation Commission because we didn't thoroughly discuss this. I understand there's some information in your packet that is quite confusing. That didn't come from me. And I believe the minutes of the meetings when that 2 Chapel Street was purchased was distributed to you at the last meeting by Donna Suzak, with saying that $225,000 came out of the open space fund for 2 Chapel Street, and we want that money back in the open space fund. And we think that's only fair, because it was never really used for open space that we were told it was. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to speak?
I feel like a yo-yo tonight. Angela Foss, 16 Crescent Beach Drive. I know you saw the pictures of this building, and I've seen the pictures, and I know you've presented, and you've been presented with the looks of the structure, let's say. And you've heard people, lots of people, talk to you about how the building doesn't fit or conform to the character of the town of Thompsonville. It really doesn't. And I know you know that. There's no brick. There's a lot of brick in T-ville. There's no brick. It just is not a comforting structure that they're building. But beyond that, you guys had set out, or whoever wrote the application of what you wanted a mixed-use building to bring people into Thompsonville, to make it a better space. And we all want that. We've been wanting that forever. The commissions before you have all wanted that. They've wanted to make Thompsonville a better place. This is not going to do it. And beyond that, there is not adequate parking in the plan. There just is not. And I know that the people who are involved have been told there's lots of parking on the streets. There is no parking available on the streets. So I want to make sure you all know this. Drive down there at night. There is no parking available on the streets. They're trying to build a bridge, and we're having a very difficult time figuring out where our Nantucket residents are going to park. We figured that out for them, but there is no space on the streets for these people to be able to park. So they all have to have their 2 cars for their 2-bedroom apartment, or even 2 cars for some 1-bedroom apartments, but they need room. I don't know if you're planning a parking lot somewhere. That might be the answer. But unless you're planning a parking lot, this really should be a real hard no for all of you. We can do better. I mean, we have one person, it's just like when you're selling your home. You have one person who's interested in your home, and then you're like, well, didn't work out. We'll move on. Find someone who doesn't need to use all of the funding from the federal government or whatever they're using to get their money. Somebody who can actually have a vision for our town. Thank you.
Is there anybody else? Yeah.
Lori Longy, 1427 Enfield Street. I wasn't going to speak about this, but I was sitting back there and I was just compelled. I honestly thought that the mixed-use design was great. You were going to bring businesses down there, or restaurants, or little shops, or whatever. That's really what was going to bring something down to Thompsonville. I don't think just all apartments is what Enfield needs. And Kelly said it right. I've been around generational. We saw this already once. We're just getting more of the same. I think that we can do better. And I really think that we should think about it, because I think that what we needed was to bring businesses down there and not just bring more housing, because that's what we have a lot of. So I just think it should be something that people think about. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else? Okay, I declare public hearing number 3 concluded. Thank you. We will move onward to our next portion of the meeting. Prayer, Councilor Hopkins.
So today is Juneteenth, our state's newest recognized holiday, a celebration and remembrance of freedom. Juneteenth memorializes the freeing of Black Americans from enslavement in Galveston, Texas on June 19, 1865, 3 years after President Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation. Although it was not until the ratification of the 13th Amendment in December of that year that slavery was abolished in Delaware and Kentucky. The history of how we enshrine freedom into our law is important, as is the fact that Black Americans were not considered people for about 90 years prior. We need to remember this history, especially as a foil to judge where we are at today. Given our past failings, as we are now protecting the freedoms of our fellow Black Americans? Are we building communities that recognize and benefit from the strengths and differences of all Americans? I'd invite every infielder to mark Juneteenth with fun and celebration like was done on the town green this weekend, while also keeping these questions in our hearts year-round. Thank you.
Sheila, roll call, please.
Counselor Hopkins.
Here.
Counselor Ludwig.
Here.
Counselor Mangini.
Here.
Counselor Nelson.
Here.
Counselor Pisner.
Here.
Counselor Santinella is absent. Counselor Ungary.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Sakala.
Here.
Mayor Crisati.
Here.
Counselor Despard.
Here.
And Counselor Finger is absent. That's 9 members present, 2 are absent.
Next, fire evacuation announcement. In the event of a fire, there are exits in the back of the room, and to my left, the audience is right. Exit through the doors, go downstairs and into the parking lot. Next, item 6, minutes of preceding meetings. Do I have a motion to accept the minutes of the special meeting on June 5th, 2023?
So moved.
Councilor Nelson and a second by Councilor Mangini. By show of hands, all in favor? Okay, that is unanimous. Next, do I have a motion to accept the regular meeting minutes of June 5th, 2023?
So moved.
Councilor Ungary and a second by Councilor Nelson. By show of hands, all in favor? Against? Okay, it's unanimous, 9-0. Thank you. All right, there are no special guests. Next, there will be public communications. Once again, before we start our public communications, I just want to remind everyone that you'll have 5 minutes to address the council. Please refrain from any personnel matters or personal attacks on anyone. We don't respond during public comment, but as a reminder to everyone, this is not a forum to air grievances or even to discuss town employees. When you come up, please state your name and address for the record. And once again, just want to remind everyone we expect decorum from everybody and in attendance and from the public and from our counselors. All right, public communications. Is there anybody that would like to approach the council?
Good evening. Tom Tyler, 18 Bridge Lane, Enfield, Connecticut. At the June 5th council meeting, the BAA requested a special meeting with the town council in order to respond or rebut Mario's report, which we considered unfair and completely one-sided. In our view, there were many instances in which it was incorrect on the facts and on the law. And the report, again, in our view, was fundamentally unfair to us individually and collectively as a group, as well as to the town council and Enfield's taxpayers. Since we were the ones who were smeared without a chance to explain or defend ourselves, we requested an opportunity to present our side of the story. Based upon what you said, as councilors during council communications, we were led to believe the council had reached a near unanimous consensus to afford us the same format it had provided Mario to present his report on June 5th. That format being a special meeting, open to the public, not executive session, in council chambers, televised, and then the BAA would present its rebuttal, which would be uninterrupted and without interference from the public or the administration. Finally, the BAA would then take any and all questions from councilors without time limitation. We'd stay here all night if necessary in order to thoroughly and completely answer any questions pertaining to the report or the revaluation. I also wish to acknowledge that I appreciated being assured by Mayor Crissati a few days later, after canvassing councilors regarding their availability, that I would be contacted with some suggested dates and times to review with BAA members and Rachel in order to arrive at a mutually convenient date to set for our special meeting. Unfortunately, that assured contact attempt was never made to me nor to Rachel. I'm not blaming Mayor Crissati personally. I'm just saying it was not done. Instead, this past Friday evening at 6:52 p.m., I received a dictatorial email from Attorney Talberg that was deeply disturbing. I'm going to hand it to the clerk when I'm done. I don't want to waste my time reading it out loud. You all have received a similar thing. Now it appeared that sometime between June 5th and June 16th, town administration had somehow taken over complete control of scheduling and proceeded to redefine the BAA special meeting format. Town administrators had morphed the town councilors' consensus, as I described a minute or so ago, into an absolutely ridiculous, unfair format to be moderated by Attorney Talberg. Compared to the format enjoyed by Mario and assured for the BAA special meeting, there were significant changes which we regard as poison pills added to undercut the basic purpose of the special meeting for the BAA. Those format changes were, when we were to present our rebuttal uninterrupted and without interference from the public or administration, that has been changed, and I understand that the report, Mayor's report, basically has become a Bible not to be criticized or questioned by the BAA. The moderator, Attorney Talberg, would control agenda topics. The administration would determine a few select items for debate between the assessor and the BAA, but that also is improper as it's not BAA, but the taxpayer versus the assessor. The BAA then listens to the evidence and weighs it and renders decisions in a fair, right, just, and equitable manner. There was, my understanding, to be a strict 10-minute limit per item, no matter how complex. Finally, for the BAA to take questions from everybody, I don't believe that would be possible under the new format because you have a town employee there, and I don't believe the council is supposed to be asking a town employee any questions. So the BAA then is unable to take the questions, and the town councilors, the town councilors' role would strictly be as observers and not to open their mouths throughout the so-called workshop. To act more like potted plants and shut up, no questions would be allowed. I don't know how that's helpful. At the last council meeting, we were assured that BAA members would have an opportunity to speak and respond to the report equal to the manner and format Burkham Moses had before the council. Contrary to what we've been told in the public record, Attorney Talberg's Friday night email that the council had scheduled a workshop for June 26th, and that was to be non-adversarial. In other words, the BAA would be foreclosed from raising issues with the report that Attorney Talberg does not want raised, denying the BAA its opportunity to defend itself as publicly as it was smeared. Non-adversarial? Not when a report paid by the town and available to the public is so one-sided that just one more day of not correcting that record is another day of injustice to me, Lori, Donna, and the entire BAA. If Attorney Talberg was speaking for the council, I concluded the council had reneged on its word. So I'm here tonight to reaffirm with the council that you'll be keeping your word despite what Attorney Talberg has said. I request that you substitute our special meeting for the date of June 26th with the same format, terms, and conditions Mario enjoyed and we were promised on June 5th, concurrently postponing the workshop for at least 2 weeks until we can come up with a mutually acceptable date to be determined after consultation with all interested parties and the BAA engaged in a dialogue to arrive at a format acceptable to all. 3 questions that I hear a lot from citizens and the taxpayers are, why are they trying so desperately to shut you up or suppress the BAA? Second, what are they afraid of? And third, who is they? Thank you very much for your time. Did I make it in 5 minutes? Thank you very much. Then I should not have to come back again.
Yep.
Good evening. Donna Dubanowski, 23 Betty Road. I'd like to bring you back to the beginning of last year when the BAA came in front of you to tell you that we had saw on the field cards and dubbed it the creation of the Fountain of Youth formula, which was our words because it made properties get younger as they aged. Concurrently, even though no improvements had been made on the property, we saw the effective year and the condition magically gets newer or younger. These changes artificially increased assessment values. Mario's report stated on page 36 and 37 that the conditions are based on physical observations made in the field by different data collectors. So basically, it's a degree of subjectivity. Then goes on to say that the public needs to mention this to Vision or to Todd or to the assessor and to have an open communication. I explained my personal street cards to Mario and how I went to Vision from my home in the last reevaluation, and that it was the Vision employees who were still there. And he told me, and she told me that she was not going to lower my assessment, but she would raise my neighbors. When she learned that I sat on the BAA, she was furious that I should have told her that from the beginning. I went in as a resident to Vision, not a BAA member. I did tell her that I understood why people came to the BAA and they were mad after they had their Vision hearings. I experienced it firsthand. She then changed my street card, and by changing my kitchen from old style to average and my home, the effective year built, increased 10 years versus the 5 that they had been doing for the reval, meaning my house after the meeting with Vision was younger, therefore my assessment after their changes went up $2,000. So we pointed out these problems on the field card, and they make the changes and they're affected to the taxpayer. Mario later explains in his report that the effective year built and that other towns suppress this field and not everyone understands what effective year is, and it confuses them or muddies the water. Basically, these assessors are saying that the people of Enfield are not smart enough so that we would be confused because it's on there. We, the BAA, we're saying, hey, this was on our field cards, we saw this issue, and all of a sudden, poof, that information disappears because it was suppressed. Now we're told from this report that when people in the field make a mistake, it may cost your property more money, you need to call the assessor and have a dialogue, or we can just hide the information so taxpayers can no longer find it. The effective year built data since it was suppressed. The best yet is the footnote 14 on page 37, where Mario minimizes the financial impact on taxpayers by stating the difference between average and good is only 5%. Only 5%. So Enfield, on a $300,000 house, 5% is $15,000. Enfield taxpayers are systematically overassessed by only 5%. So that's not a big deal to Mario, who we know is a very big deal to Enfield taxpayers, not the affluent Mario. My footnote is, there's never a time when it went down only 5%. I brought all this up in my interview with Mario, and in the report, Mario stated, after interviewing Tyler and Longy, it is apparent their concerns were focused on the effective year built. Tom had even said in his interview to ask Donna or Lori, but especially ask Donna because it affected her personally. So why was Tyler signaled out in the report and no mention of me? I don't have a transcript from my interview, and I'm not sure why they would not transcribe a BAA member's interview, but maybe my interview didn't fit the narrative of the report. I do believe I need more time to explain this troubling practice so that we can all fully understand and hopefully get to the bottom of it. In conclusion, what we had said about the Fountain of Youth and the formula in the effective year built was all correct. And we pointed this out to you last year. The report, however, twists and turns like a roller coaster on the subject matter, so you really don't know that what we said was actually correct. So that's why we want to take the time, and we need the time, like we agreed at the last meeting, that we would be able to sit before you guys and you could ask us questions and we do the back and forth. We need that time. We deserve that time to rebut this report on television in a non-timed presentation to you council members and to the residents in town. And I would ask that you make sure that we are given that same time and respect. Thank you.
Lori Longy, 1427 Enfield Street. I want to bring you back to the beginning. See something, say something. I want to explain where we are coming from. We basically were the whistleblowers. People that report waste, fraud, abuse, unethical practices, mismanagement, gross waste of public funds, and abuse of authority. The whistleblowers are supposed to provide specific information which enables people to properly review the complaint. The complainant should submit evidence identifying the issues, documents, and other sources of information so someone can examine the allegations. The BAA members did everything above. We came to you, we brought you this factual information, we told you the problems, and rewrote a report. We thought it should have been a council-run investigation just going through everything that we had, but that's not what happened. Now, here we are today, spent a ton of public money, and let's blame the victims. The whistleblower laws are written to prevent this type of retaliation. One of the biggest issues I had with this entire investigation was that the BAA were basically the complainants, yet we were the last ones to be interviewed. Why? Doesn't anybody wonder why? I read the RFP, I read the MOU. It was all about the reevaluation and the assessment practices. When I asked, I was told that they had the BAA report, but we had a vast amount of documents that compiled the report that no one asked us for anything. We actually insisted on being interviewed. Why is that? I met with Mario just like the other BAA members at the very end of this independent review, and I believe that that report was already written. I went over these 284 pages, one by one, in a 7-hour interview. I gave him annotated pages where I felt there was the issues, and I gave him the Connecticut Association of Assessing Officers Handbook. I highlighted the pages of the PA 490 Farm Bureau Guide. I gave him the case law, and I gave him the backup information from the actual appeal and the appeal number from where the information was from. This was not addressed in the report or the appendix. This is why I wanted to explain to you last year, and especially now before you blindly take a recommendation from someone that told us that he was not there to judge the BAA, but then he does exactly that. He said he was in the room to hear the cases like we did, and he did not look at them one by one on a case-by-case basis. So he judges us, but then he doesn't look at the cases. What were we paying him to do? The BAA heard the appeals. We looked and read the 10,000 documents that they just copied and Bates numbered. We had a duty to the taxpayer of this town to be able to give you the information that was given to us. He should have and wanted to know what we had first and not last. You should want to know what we have. He should have interviewed more than one person. He should have disclosed his relationship with the assessors. Don't you think he should have told you that both are longtime clients of Burke and Moses? On top of that, he was teaching a class to all of them and all of the Connecticut assessors basically last week to learn how to win cases over taxpayers in a mock trial. He is simply an attorney that represents the best interests of the assessors. After your last meeting, I received many calls, a few handwritten letters from residents, and the common theme was, how can any employee just be rude and mostly follow the law? Plus, residents know that the state statute was not followed for the reversals. Do you find that mostly is an acceptable bar for any employee? We were asking that June 26th be a special meeting for us to be held in the same manner that you gave Mario, so we may speak fully and not be shut down. Everyone says, let's move forward. And don't you think that we want to move forward too? We have lost sleep over taxpayer issues. We have spent countless of hours on appeals. We've done field reviews, and there's a lot of time and energy to sit on a board. Don't forget, we were the whistleblowers, and then we got attacked. It sends a clear message to the public. It could be why it's so hard to get people to sit on the boards. You said at the last council meeting that we would have this opportunity to speak and present our side to the public, and then that was all changed. I can only hope for the residents and the taxpayers of this town that you'll do the right thing. Thank you.
Is there anybody else that wants to approach the council? Yep.
Good evening. It's Phil Dumont, 13 Celtic Court. Got a couple things. I know all of you are wondering where's the numbers. I'm wondering too. So I'm keep looking for the revisions of the budget. I'm anxious to dig into them. So maybe I can get some guidance on that. But actually, I have new old business. At the last meeting, the discussions of the neighborhood center, the Strand Theater, which I used to work at, coming down, brought to mind thoughts of Angelo Lamagna. Now, the building's gone, but not his memory. And yet, and I might be stepping on my toes here because there's a lot more information I don't know about, but I'd like to, Angelo, I didn't even know Angelo personally. I was a kid in the 60s, and Angelo was, and I think back to Angelo and just watch him in person. He lived that recreation job for over 40 some odd years. He was a veteran, World War II vet. I never saw a guy who was so passionate about his job. I remember playing Little League Baseball in the mid-'60s, as Tom Tyler probably does as well. Here's a guy at 5:45, the game starting 6 o'clock, he's still putting lines on the fields because this town is exploding with children. Trying to meet the needs of all these kids. I was just always flabbergasted how this guy just did it. He I don't know how many hours a day he did this, but he was only working for the kids. So I started looking at that and coming up with some of my ideas, and obviously I'll leave them to you to decide, but I started doing a little history so I don't step on my foot, and I did. When I started looking, I was looking at places around town we could name things, and I'm not usually a fan of naming things, but we already know Angelo. He's in the Enfield Hall of Fame. So I thought, well, the buildings, but and then I also looked at the history of Alcorn and A.D. Higgins School. Those schools are named because they were landowners who donated the land to the town, in my research. So I have an idea that with Angelo and actually I went back a little history. I'm a little history buff. So in the early 60s, when they did the town master plan, if you go back to the Enfield Press, the people that developed that master plan were, and Angelo wished he had more input to it, but he spoke of his own vision of a recreational area in the early 50s. And he already mapped out a thing that would cost $200,000, and in the 50s, that was a lot of money. And what he said to the planners was that they were going to do a self-funding drive with citizens and knock on doors and fund $200,000 to put a recreation center, amazingly, on this property right here we're sitting on this land where the town hall is. And I thought, how ironic is that? And but then St. Patrick's Church burnt in 1949, and his idea was in the early 50s, around that time. And they couldn't knock on doors because they were knocking on doors to rebuild the church. So with that in mind, I thought with the Higgins Park, if there'd be consideration to call it Angelo Lamagna Recreation Area at Higgins Park, or Higgins Park, so that you don't lose Angelo's contribution to this whole community. And he's a Thompsonville guy, heart and soul. But the whole town, he did the boxing thing for over 40 years. He coached St. Joe's School for 30 some odd years. He's in a boxing Hall of Fame. He was a boxer as a youngster. So that's one option. The second one is a little bit of unfinished business, I think. And I knew this guy fairly well, Frank Mancuso. Been a mayor of this town for over 40 years. He was a trailblazer in the early 60s from going selectman form of government to the town council form of government. He got elected with a whole group of people early on, became a mayor for over 10 years. He was early involved in the Hazardville Little League formation because when it separated into so many children. He later went to work for Ella Grasso appointed him as the director of emergency preparedness. And the late, great Ella Grasso, I will say. I'm so old, I worked at her inauguration in January of '75. So, but she was just an amazing lady to see in action. But back to Frank, he also served under Governor O'Neill and Weicker. Even in his obituary, it says, the town council has said they would put up a recreation area for him as well. There was a sign at where our the town dump is, or whatever you want to call it these days, that once those were capped, they were going to put recreation fields on there and name it. And it was already named for Frank. That never happened. So I was kind of thinking, if whether at Fermi or at Potter Hollow, you do the same kind of thing, is that Frank Mancuso Recreation Area at Potter Hollow, and within it you got Bob Brunner Field. But that's it. I'm done.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else that wants to come up?
Hi, everyone. Anne Marie Galdenzi, 1330 Enfield Street. As a resident and not involved in the whole BAA, I would like to hear the other side. I watched the last meeting. I haven't read all the notice or the report, but I would like to hear the other side speak. I think it would only be fair before any decisions are made. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to approach the council? Okay, I declare public communications over. Moving onward to item 9, councilor communications. we'll go with Deputy Mayor Scala.
Thank you. First and foremost, congratulations to all of the graduates at Enfield High. I know a lot of us were in attendance at the graduation. It was a beautiful ceremony, and the rain held off, so that was wonderful. Just a couple of comments in response to public communications. So, Mr. Tyler, Mr. Talberg and our town manager did what leadership asked them to do. Nobody promised you, because I was at that meeting, nobody promised the BAA a special meeting at the dais on TV with uninterrupted time to speak. We said we would give you a special meeting, and that's what we offered. You've declined. You said that's not what you want, and that's fine. But don't blame our town attorney. Don't blame our town manager. Don't blame our town administration. You have a problem with the way it was done? You can blame me. You can blame leadership, because we are the ones that set that agenda. We're the ones that asked Mr. Talberg, Attorney Talberg, to be the moderator and the facilitator. We're the ones that decided that you should be able to both discuss 7 or so properties. That was us. That was leadership. You can blame me, not our town staff. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Mangini.
Thank you. I, too, would want to congratulate our Enfield High School 2023 grads. It was a beautiful ceremony, and the rain did hold off, thankfully. So it was really, really an enjoyable event. I also do want to give a thank you to our police department. JFK had their grade 8 dance before school ended, and I was thoroughly impressed with how our staff, JFK staff and our PD, worked so well together to coordinate all these thousands of children running into cars on Pearl Street. And the staff at JFK actually was opening doors to the kids' cars so they got in safely. We had the PD working, with the school department. It was just so well organized. I was amazed. Kids had a great time, and everyone was happy. I think there were like 40 pictures, and I was just thoroughly impressed with how well it was orchestrated. I just want to say thank you to Enfield PD and to our staff at JFK for doing such a great job. And on another note, we had 2 celebrations this weekend. One, we had the Pride celebration at the Congregational Church across the street, conducted by our Enfield Cultural Arts Commission, and that was very well attended, and it was very enlightening, and I was very proud to be in attendance along with several council members, and our mayor. And I just want to reinforce the fact that, we all need to support our local groups and people that, maybe have different perspectives, on things. Then we had the Juneteenth celebration, which was right here at Town Hall, same day, about the same time. But that was well attended, and that was very enlightening as well. They had vendors and speakers and some music. Again, council people and our mayor attended, and I was very honored to be present at that ceremony. And again, I just want to encourage people, get out there and support your local community, support people that may have different values, different perspectives, different mores in life. It's a community that we belong to, and it was good to see people out there having fun. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Despard.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to build off of Councilor Hopkins' prayer and just bring some more attention to the fact that today is Juneteenth. I was surprised that our meeting wasn't next week instead. I think this is the only federal holiday that's on a Monday that we do meet on. So that was just a little surprising to me. It's something we might want to look at. But I sort of have, it's weird to say happy Juneteenth. I sort of have mixed feelings about that. I have mixed feelings about it being a holiday. I just have mixed feelings about it. And on the one hand, it's a reminder of this moral stain on our country, and and how just the terrible effects of slavery. And on the other hand, it's a reminder of our extraordinary ability to heal and to overcome and to move forward and to become the best version of ourselves. And so, I choose not to celebrate the day as the end of slavery, but rather as a long road, towards progress, one that we're still on, to make sure that we are ensuring equality for all. So I wanted to take a second to reflect on that. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Councilor Pisner.
To the mayor, to the town manager, I sent you an email asking you for an explanation of the ECS block grant, and I haven't gotten a response back on that. And I asked maybe John Wilcox weigh in on that, because I did CC Attorney Talberg on it as well.
I responded.
I checked as when I left the house, but I didn't get anything.
It was sent out 4:30 this afternoon.
Okay, I left to come here, so, and I don't bring my computer. The question that I asked is, and again, it's just a clarification. The BOE grant that they get, and I am not against this grant money. I think it's great. I think our town deserves it. I think our kids deserve it. But it's unclear. And again, I'm only talking about the two budgets that I've been elected to. Okay, I don't know prior to that. In the last two BOE budgets, I can't find where the extra money went. So in 2022, the BOE budget was $73,275,252, and the resolution on that was including $28,600,000 in ECS funding. They actually got $29,823,645, a difference of $1,223,000. This year, the same thing happened. So, to me, I can't find where that extra money went. I know we are the pass-through, so we receive the grant in the town, and then the town gives it to the school. But that ups what we give them in our budget. So I would like an explanation, please.
If you would like to respond now, that would be great.
So this is a very confusing formula. And I did, when I received Councilor Pisner's question, I did ask John Wilcox to supply me with a copy of his ECS funding flowchart, which is in your manila folders, which gives you a visual of how to look at this. Councilor Pisner had a couple of questions. Just briefly paraphrase my response to her. The email that I had previously sent about ECS funding should be referenced. Basically, just to start over, education cost sharing is a revenue that is provided to the town to fund their portion of public education. It does not get passed through to the Board of Education. It stays with the town. So when you look at our totals, which is another question that Councilor Pisner had. Her question was, what was the final budget amount given to the BOE for fiscal year 22-23 and 23-24? So that information appears on page 8 of the budget. The total amount for 22-23 was $73,275,252, as she noted. The total amount for 23-24 is going to be $75,929,555. The state contributed $29,823,645, and will do the same for next year per the existing state information. So we did not budget for the full 29 because we had no confidence that the Alliance grant, which was roughly $1.433 million, was going to come through. So John Wilcox conservatively estimated the lower number. If we had gotten the money, it wouldn't have come to us anyway. Alliance goes directly to the Board of Education. So in essence, what happened when the state budget was adopted at the higher amount, which created a gap of approximately 1.4 million and change, is that we took in that revenue. It is part of the education cost sharing revenue reimbursement to the town for the money that we spend on education. So all we did is we put it in an account that's marked ECS for Board of Education, and there's a surplus now. So there's 1.4 additional, which meant that we did not overtax anticipating 29. We underestimated, we got more, we took it in, we put it in our bank account, and we have a surplus, which is great. In essence, what we're going to do now is not have to use part of our fund balance or other monies to make up the difference or fund education. We are reducing our use of fund balance, which is exactly what we did last year as well. So there is not 1.433 and change floating out there as an extra grant. It didn't come. We took in extra revenue, and we're keeping that revenue, and we are reducing our use of other funds to fund our portion of education. John Wilcox is here, but he and I met earlier to make sure that we had our numbers straight, and I believe that that is probably the easiest explanation, but we can explore it more if there's follow-up questions.
Okay, thank you.
I have a follow-up question. So it is my understanding that the block grant is the pass-through through the town.
I will ask John Wilcox to join me, but no. The only pass-through is the Alliance grant, which we did not receive. They get that. They get that directly. ECS stays on the town side, and we use it to fund our portion.
So so that 1.4 million plus.
Yes.
The Board of Ed has that money.
No.
We have that money? So we don't need a resolution to straighten it out? From an accounting perspective, if an auditor came in, I have a very hard time wrapping my head around how this is done.
It's a difficult issue, but maybe John can talk specifically about the reporting piece of it.
John, if you want to respond to that.
So with the ECS funding for a normal school district, the 29, I'll just use a round number, 29,500,000, that money comes into the town, okay? And we use that to offset whatever we budget for the school. So in our case, say $76 million, okay? With an Alliance district, they typically do not give the entire $29,500,000 to the town anymore. What they do is they skim some off the top. To do that, they take the amount that you were awarded in 2012. They take the amount over that, and the state takes that money and gives it directly to the school. Okay, so they give the town less money. All right, and that's what I budgeted for, both in 2023, and they adopted a different rule for that for 2023. But then I did, and we assumed it was going to be changed back to the original rule for 2024, and it was not. But I budgeted a lower number, what we expected to receive from the state. that difference, the $1.4 million, the OPM would take that money, give it to the State Board of Education, who would then turn around and give it directly to the school. Now, normally, when ECS funding is reduced, we're allowed to reduce the expenditures that we appropriate for the Board of Education. With an alliance district, we are not allowed to reduce those expenditures. So we end up funding, the town ends up funding an additional $1.4 million because they don't receive that money from the state. That money is given directly to the school, so the school gets the same amount that we were going to give them in the previous year, and then they get from the State Board of Education an additional $1.4 million.
Okay, so just to be clear, last year, the $1,223,645, I didn't see that in the budget. I don't see where that's put back into our budget.
Okay, it won't be put back into our budget. It will be put in on the actual side, so actual will be greater than the budget amount. Okay, so when you close out all of the budgeted accounts and the budgeted expenditure accounts, you will have more revenue than you expected. And it will go into, now, last year for FY23, we planned on using, in the budget, we had, I think, $7.143 million use of fund balance, okay? That means we planned on having our expenditures higher than our revenue, and we were gonna use fund balance to cover that. So because this revenue came in higher than what we budgeted, because of this change in the state law when they actually adopted the fiscal year 23 budget, we are going to get more money than we budgeted for, and that money will then go into the fund balance, and we'll end up using less fund balance than we originally planned on.
Okay, so from a taxpayer's perspective, I just think there has to be a little bit more transparency on how that happens, because actually the 1.4 is a $500,000. And we just went up such a huge increase. But I have another question. I'll get off this. I'm done with the whole thing, but I would like to say something to the BAA. You're correct. We offered them a special meeting. I do think that they have the right to be heard. I think they should have some time given to them. I know what leadership decided, but as a counselor, I also feel for them. We have 3 competent people who have worked tirelessly for the residents of this town. And I would like to see them get their fair time.
Okay, Councilor Ungar.
Okay. I wanted to congratulate all the Enfield High graduates, also the adult ed. Also, the Senior Center had their 20th anniversary celebration for a week, and that was fun. I got to attend several events there. They had a great dinner. Thank you, Mr. Dumont, for your information and for your suggestions. As far as the BAA is concerned, I think they should be given the same courtesy, and they should be able to speak unmonitored, just to be able to say what they feel needs to be said, and to be able to defend themselves and just have the same courtesy that Mario did.
Councilor Ludwig.
Thanks, John. I don't want to. So the 75 million. Let's break the 75 million that the board gets allocated. That's in a fund. It's a revenue account, correct? So how does that set up in our? So when the auditors come in, they just look at the budget and they basically say they don't comment on how they spend their money. But how does that sit in our budget? It's an account in our budget, correct?
So it is a series of expenditure accounts that are on the Board of Ed side.
But it sits within our. Right. So I want to make sure it's not spliced where I want to make sure. Do they?
So if you just look at the accounts that I have access to,
Yeah.
revenue and expenditure accounts, it shows that we have $75 million more in revenue than expenditures.
Right.
That $75 million is the Board of Ed appropriation.
Right.
Okay? So when you look in the front of the budget book and you see the summary of expenditures, you will see the town expenditures and you will see the Board of Ed expenditures and then a total. All right? That $75 million that goes to the Board of Ed, I don't have access to those
Right,
accounts.
yep.
We tell them what they have or what the appropriation was, and then they divide it up into their actual detailed expenditure accounts.
So right now, we're showing 76.4 million as opposed to 75 as a revenue account.
Not in the budget.
But that's
It would
what
be
came-
in actual, yes.
Right, in
Provided
actual,
everything
right.
else ran
So
according
it's
to budget.
semantics, but we're overcharging the taxpayers 1.4 million, whatever account it goes into, we can argue. It's that, listen, I understand why you budget the way, I'm not questioning that, but that's what the revenue came in. And again, ECS, even if it's sitting in a town account, that goes to education. And I would like to actually get a comment from our auditors. How can that go into our fund balance? It's coming from the state for a specific use, which is for education. And I understand it goes to a surplus. I get that. But again, it doesn't sound, we should have to do, in my opinion, another resolution to be clear that it's not 75 million, whether it's coming through a town account or it's going to a board account. It doesn't matter. It's the number that matters. And by the way, it's 76.4, not the 75 million that was approved. And I don't know how we don't have another resolution to clarify that. Exactly. That's only my question. I'm not questioning what account it's coming from, nothing. It's basically, that's the two numbers.
The appropriation for the Board of Ed is only $75 million. That's the expenditure. That's all they're allowed to spend.
In the past, when we did ECS, we estimated ECS. We were aggressive because if they underfunded us, we always had the agreement we'd make the board whole. Here we did the complete opposite. We were conservative, and now we have an extra 1.4 million that, quite frankly, again, because we can't reset the mill rate, sorry, it shouldn't go into our surplus. It's an overcharge to the taxpayer.
It's not really going into surplus because it's actually going to reduce the amount of appropriated fund balance that we were going to
Again, sorry, John, I disagree with you on this one. Two other things real quick. I agree. I think if we're going to have a special meeting, and I apologize, I haven't seen my email because it's been down, but I think that BA should have a chance to speak. I don't know why we don't allow it. If we're going to have, where everyone's going to be there on a special meeting on the 26th, allow them to have their time to speak. And the council should be able to sit here with everything that's gone on in the last year and a half. I don't see why we don't allow them to have their time. They're residents, they're volunteers, they should have their time. And then last thing, I want to personally thank the East Longmeadow Planning Zoning of Appeals Planning and Zoning for allowing Enfield residents to speak at the issue that's happening right on the Enfield border. They have been gracious. They've allowed us to speak, not myself, but other residents who are affected, what my understanding will be basically, I'm trying to be politically correct here, a recycling facility / dump on our border. And they have been very gracious, so I want to just publicly acknowledge that because they've been allowed other residents to speak. And it's a big deal, and it's tomorrow night. I think they're voting, and it's a big deal. Even you should pay attention because we talk about truck traffic. If you understand where that entrance is, right on the Enfield border, you use your own judgment whether you're going to go left and go through the center of Longmeadow or you're going to go right and go through Brainerd Road. I can tell you where my GPS would send me. It's a big deal, and Enfield residents should be paying attention to it. But again, I want to publicly thank and acknowledge the graciousness and hospitality of the East Longmeadow Planning and Zoning Commission. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let's go. Councilor Nelson, then Councilor Hopkins.
Okay, couple things. Through the mayor to the town manager, do we have any idea when we will be able to get Mr. Dumont the information that he's looking for? And I believe that's the amended budget.
Yes, I mean, we're working on it, and it has to be available to everybody on or before July 1st.
July 1st. Okay,
don't
thank
know.
you. And then next, as far as people were talking about the Fair Rent Commission, I would say go on the town's website under boards and commissions and fill out the applications, and let's start entertaining some new members to get involved with this. so we can get that board back together. Another thing is, I'm getting a lot of residents in District 1 that are very concerned about the telephone poles from, say, Ann Street to Weymouth Road. They have so many lines on them. I mean, it looks like a city, and the poles are all leaning, and it just, there's no other place in town, not even Thompsonville is that bad, just that stretch. So maybe if we have DPW check those poles out before one of them does get pulled over because of the weight. Another thing, I received a letter in the mail regarding the parking on Highland Park and how I was wrong, but unfortunately, no return address, no signature, no address. All they did was put all the street cards in here from the residents on Highland Park. So this means absolutely nothing to me. You wasted your time. It could have been written by somebody on Francis Avenue. So if you have concerns, you've at least got to sign it. Now, here's one that was signed, and we all received it. It is comments from Mr. Zanoni about the project in the center of town. I believe, Ellen, you got them too. Can we just enter these into the record?
Sheila already has them.
Okay, do I need to read them into the record? No. Okay, so that saves some time. Now, I'm still going. Oh, no, okay. As far as the BAA goes, yes, I was in leadership. Yes, I did agree to the meeting where you could go head-to-head with the assessor, and we picked 7 of the top challenging issues that have been an issue for 2 years in a row. We agreed. We worked together on it, and we set up the meeting. Some people did not like the meeting, but I thought, what a better way for the BAA to defend their decisions than going head-to-head with the assessor in front of basically the jury, because we're the ones who got to make the decision on what we're going to do to move forward. I'm not quite sure why the BAA doesn't want to do this. I thought it was a great opportunity for them to defend some of the decisions that were outlined in the report that make people wonder, why was that decision made, including myself. And I'm sure most counselors up here have the same questions. Some, I believe, have already picked a side. I'm still wide open on this because I have nothing to say whether they're right or the assessor's right. And that's why I was really looking forward to the head-to-head to make a decision myself, who is right on these top 7, or who is interpreting the law the way I see it interpreted, or who's treating the people with respect and who's not. These are the things I think we need to look at because our taxpayers are basically being held hostage. Since the BAA does not want to do this, I'm okay with the 26th. Let them come in, talk about the report, which is one-sided. So, I mean, we're not going to get anywhere with that because it's their side of the story. The assessor himself was not given his side yet. The attorney gave their opinion. I'm not going to say whether it was biased or not. There's been accusations. So if they want to come in the 26th and that's what they want to use their special meeting for, then I say let them come in the 26th, use the special meeting that we agreed to, and then that's it. And then we'll have to make a decision from there. But not knowing the outcome of these 7 issues, I think it's going to be pretty hard to make a decision, a fair decision, without seeing both sides explain why they made the decisions they made on our taxpayers. So that's where I stand.
Councilor.
Thank you, Mr.
Hopkins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple things from me. I did receive the letter referenced by Councilor Nelson. I'm assuming it's written in good faith. However, I have had a number of other communications from people living on Highland Park just to express their thoughts. I'm glad that some residents came to the last meeting as well. Their concern is just that if we only regulate parking on Francis Avenue for residents, for non-residents, folks will just move to the other side. I think that's a fair concern. I was glad that there was bipartisan support to make sure that folks on Francis Avenue aren't having nightly noise disturbances and urine and all sorts of horrible things. But I think it would be important if we do move forward on that. I really hope we do for a permanent ban to include Highland Park with that. I think it's a fairly basic thing. I don't think we necessarily want to include every single street in that area. I think this will be sufficient based off of my understanding of the issue and what a number of people have talked to me about. Secondly, there has been a lot of prior discussion over the last 2 years about WPCA committee, including in Public Works. I think there's a framework there. I think we could take that and run with it. I hope we do. I understand other folks concerned about that. I think there's a way to make sure that the council's not ceding its WPCA authority. But I would recommend through the mayor to the town manager just to look back at that and maybe start there. A lot of that work's been done. Thirdly, truck traffic. I have also been following the issue across the border. I'm glad that their council has allowed residents of Enfield to speak in front of it. I think they're likely to approve that. I think we're likely to get more truck traffic in Enfield, and I would hope that this council considers some kind of restriction for semi-trucks in town on certain roads, because we know they're coming. Lastly, I do support the concern related to BAA. My understanding the last meeting was that there was some bipartisan agreement for having a special meeting to talk to the assessor and to talk to the BAA to be able to ask the questions that we have the, I think, responsibility and power to do as a council. So I would make that request formally. I don't know if Councilors Pisner and Ungary were making that specifically, but my request would be for a special meeting to talk to the assessor, to just ask questions, and also to ask the BAA. I'm sure there are a number of questions people have. I still have a couple of my own and some from my constituents that I think need to be asked of the BAA and the assessor. So I would make that formal request. Hopefully there's another councilor that would support that to trigger the procedure rules.
Okay, Councilor Despard? No, Councilor Despard, then I have some comments.
Okay, through the mayor to the finance director, can you explain, just one thing I'm confused about, is if we didn't budget for the 1.4 million and Alliance money was to come in, would that have presented a problem for us in the budget?
Well, yes, because if we budgeted for the full amount of the ECS funding, we would have received about $1.4 million less in actual funding. So we would have ended up short on our revenue.
So it's my understanding that we budgeted that 1.4 to avoid a possible deficit.
That's correct, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Couple of comments myself here. I'll allow you to go, and then it's going to be my turn. You guys have usurped up quite a bit of the time here, so go ahead.
I apologize,
No,
but I
that's
have
okay.
questions.
Go ahead.
I did send you another, I'm
She has
sorry.
the right to speak.
To the mayor, to the town manager, I did send you another email asking you if we could get the BAA transcripts electronically, and you said you were going to check into that. I do know there are people that want to read them, but they're in Sheila's office, and people don't have 8 hours in the working day. So is there any way that any of all those transcripts could be electronic?
In looking into the issue, I did find that Attorney Coppola has made some of them electronic and sent them over to the attorney representing the BAA. So we are looking to gain access to that Dropbox to see if we can share it here as well.
Thank you. And the second question, and I guess, again, I'm going to go to Attorney Talberg on this one. So again, I'm beginning to understand this budget and this money, and I don't quite agree with it. I'm going to say it out loud. I don't agree with this is the way you do accounting. I think it should be transparent. Do we need a resolution? Because now we had that 1.4 plus million going back into our budget.
Councilor Pisner would have to look at that. I don't recall us doing that in the past 4 years. I trust that the finance director's been doing it properly, but we'll take a look at it.
Okay, thank you. Take all the time that you need. You're welcome. First of all, I just want to mention to everybody in regard to, we have a very competent finance director who has the best interest in our town and did a fantastic job in explaining the cost-sharing grant, which I think, people have to be educated how the cost-sharing grant works. So this year we also had the Alliance District, all right? So there were 3 scenarios that were going to be taking place, all right? So John budgeted conservatively, all right, because as he mentioned before, and he did the same thing the year before and the year before that, he does it correctly. Throw in the Alliance District. If we had budgeted that extra 1.4, all right, and then if we got Alliance District money, we would have been out $2.8 million. We would have been out $2.8 million. I think everybody understands that. And that's, we discussed it at a Board of Ed meeting. John thoroughly had discussed all of this. This money does come back to us. We can eliminate debt. We can do what we have to, whatever we decide we want to do with this extra money that we're going to be getting. And that's very important. But we have to school ourselves a little better on the cost-sharing grant. It's just not, do you know how much money that's actually the taxpayers are into the Board of Ed meeting? It's, the 75,000. John, what was the actual amount that taxpayers actually pay? It was 40-something million, correct?
Yeah, I can't remember the actual amount
Exact
off the
numbers,
top of my
but-
head. I think you had it in your email. Let me see if I can find it real quick.
So it would have been this 75, 929, 555 minus the 29, so yeah, it's 40 and change.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, so when I went on to the website for the state of Connecticut, it showed very clearly what we were getting. It actually says we're getting the same amount next year. And there's a little asterisk on the bottom that says, if you are in an alliance district, you're going to be flat funded through 2025. So we were getting that. And I guess I'm kind of defending myself here.
Well,
because we're crucified over that 1.4 when we should have known it was coming. We were told it was coming on the website.
Okay, well, let's move on from that, and so we're ready to move on in regard to that. Quick
Well,
question.
I do have an analogy that might be helpful with this. So 2 years ago, as we were coming out of COVID, the American Rescue Plan Act went into effect. It was adopted and publicized in March of 2021. And communities were told toward the end of that budget year, heading into the next, that they were getting a very lucrative amount of money. There was a county share, there was the municipal share. If you were an entitlement community, you got it in one tranche, and if you weren't, you got it differently. Nobody planned for that. So similar to this education cost-sharing revenue, that was a revenue that came in and was booked. I don't know, John, if you could maybe recall what happened there. There's some analogies, though, because when you take in a revenue, whether it's a grant revenue or something else, and you hadn't expected it, you book it accordingly as a revenue source in your budget, on your books, your auditors look at it, and that's where it sits. So we didn't overcharge taxpayers. In fact, the exact opposite happened. If we had budgeted at the 29 level, that would have been part of the budget numbers, and it would have been factored into the creation of the mill rate. Because we didn't, the tax rate was less. So that's, I think, part of the confusion. Then we got the money. Fund balance is the answer. I think that this also is the reason why we should spend a little bit more time with the Board of Education money and the budget layout, just like we should be spending more time with water pollution control. And John and I met about that this afternoon to kind of sketch out a schedule of what might be appropriate based on the rest of your workload. But I do think that both of these are very important issues based on what all of you were doing in your seats.
Okay, thank you. Well, continuing on, just a couple of other comments in regard to, us having a meeting with the BAA. Leadership did meet. We agreed upon what we thought would probably be the best interest of how the BAA could defend any of their findings that they had in regard to the meeting that was coming up. Take seven cases, set a time limit on that. We thought that that would be something that would be appropriate. You would still have your opening statements, you'd have your closing statements, you can defend anything that you needed to defend. We thought that would be the best possible scenario for you. And, we did say that we were going to have a meeting. The meeting's still going to be on the 26th, June 26th at 6 o'clock. You'll have the opportunity to defend what you need to defend here in regard to your evaluation. In the last 2 years, I have not once heard anybody call me to complain that anybody was upset with you guys, with your group. Matter of fact, they were pretty happy with a lot of the results. So I find it very difficult for myself to imagine that you felt like you're being smeared. There was some recommendations that were made in the report. There were recommendations for the assessor. There's recommendations for the BAA. I get that. I thoroughly understand. I think we all want to move onward and move forward. I think that this year's process was a heck of a lot better than 2 years ago. And I think they all can attest to that. Maybe there was some overlap on some certain things that, we would like to hear. But we thought that what we had decided, the three of us, and then to recommend, and I didn't know that the email was going out on a Friday night. If I had known that, I would have called you. So to say that, we're not going to be listened, you're going to be listened on the 26th at 6 o'clock. I think that, that we have to move forward. I'd like to hear, and based on some of these cases, hear from the assessor. We're going to hear from you. We've heard reports. I do understand you want to be heard. I get that. I think a lot of taxpayers are pretty happy with their decisions that your group made. I have a very difficult time thinking that this is adversarial. I don't want this to be adversarial. You know, is there an underlying tone here? Previous judgments on things. I don't know. But I'd like to hear what you have to say in regard to these cases that we read in the report.
Mr. Mayor?
You know, so, you know, just let me finish what I need to say here. You know, there's a meeting that's on the 26th. It starts at 6 o'clock. The format that we had proposed, if leadership decides that they want a different format, but I'm not going to come back for three different type meetings over this. We're going to have one meeting, and we'll hear it all out, and then so that we can come up and make some recommendations. And that's what we all had decided. And I don't want anybody going back on that word. Councilor Hopkins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I definitely agree that I don't want this to be a head-to-head, and I think having it as a, BAA versus town council, or a BAA versus town assessor, my apologies, WrestleMania thing. I don't like that. I think it should be a separate meeting. I'd make that request formally as a motion, whether that's on the 26th or subsequently. I think it makes sense to have the BAA go first on the 26th. They're here. So that would be my request for a special meeting. I think it demands the council's immediate attention, and I'd request a second.
Second.
Go ahead. Repeat your
thank you.
motion,
So
please.
the motion is under the town council rules of policy and procedure, a request for a special meeting to ask questions of the BAA. I'm making that as a motion here. It really just needs two counselors.
No, I
So,
get,
yep.
yeah.
Thank you.
So there's a motion on the table.
I will second it.
There's a second by Councilor Pisner. Any discussion?
There's already a special
There's the meeting's already for the 26th. But this is a meeting on the 26th.
So, and just to clarify, Mr. Mayor, I wasn't involved in any discussion about the format. Folks kind of raising.
And it was leadership.
Yeah, okay, that's great.
Okay, and I get that.
Yep. So just, may I finish? Is that okay? So my concern with it is if, and I've kind of heard this here, if the counselors can't ask questions or are just limited to 7 areas, that's a little concerning to me. I want to make sure that that's done. I think it would make more sense as a separate meeting, whether folks want to make a separate request for the BAA and then one for the assessor separately. I'm not doing that here. I'm just making a request for a distinct meeting with the BAA, whether that's on the 26th or after. I do think it makes sense to have it on the 26th, just the BAA.
Thank you. Okay. Any discussion on the motion? Go ahead.
You don't have to vote on it.
Well, we're voting on a meeting
No, we don't have to vote.
that's already approved, already set up. So whether we take the direction out of the meeting and let them speak, but when you have a witness on the stand, do you cross-examine them? Do both sides talk to that witness? We don't have that opportunity if they're not in the same room together, and that's our point. I don't want to get into specific properties that are in question, and I've had this discussion with them, but there's questions we need answered before we can make a decision. And anybody sitting here right now who says they're ready to make a decision, they're playing favorites. And that's not our job. Our job is to get the facts. So until both bodies are in a room and they have a back and forth about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 subject properties that our taxpayers are tied up in the middle of, that we all get phone calls about, we're never going to know the outcome. Who's right? Who's wrong? Maybe it's as simple as an interpretation of the law. Maybe the BAA is 100% right, and Mario don't see it that way because he interprets the law different. But you know what? Mario's not going to be the judge. Jim's not going to be the judge, or Ellen. The 11 of us are. And until we're in the room, we're going to have a meeting with them on the 26th. Like Tom said, all night long if he has to. Then you want to have another meeting on the 27th with the assessor, all night long if he wants. Well, how do we rebut what the assessor said unless we have another meeting with them? Until they're in the same room together and we let them do their jobs. I have the full faith in the BAA, 100%. And until they can prove and clear up the questions in this and debunk the whole report, which I hope they do, we're never going to get that answer. So to say they get their time, I understand they want to defend themselves, but what a better way to defend yourself than saying, we just came from a meeting on the 26th, and out of the 4 cases Mario brought up against us, we proved ourselves on all 4 of them. How much stronger does that make their case? You're an attorney, Nick. You understand it. So you want to put your motion up for a special meeting that's already scheduled, put your motion up. I don't know what we're voting on. The meeting's already in the line.
Yeah, just since I was referenced specifically,
It's
I get
it's a
your
request.
position, Councilor Nelson. I understand that. But I don't want it to be limited, and I think having that format, it's really, as a legislative body, we want the answers, right? So it shouldn't be limited by the number of questions. It shouldn't be limited by some kind of dueling format, because I don't think that's the best way to look at this.
We're not asking the questions then. That's not our job. We're not assessors. We're not the BAA.
We do have the investigative power under the charter. I think it's our duty to taxpayers to ask those questions. So I think we have a difference of opinion. I've raised the request here under the correct procedural format. So we can disagree on that, but I'm just requesting that special meeting. Thank you.
Well, we are going to be having the meeting on the 26th. Period. That's it. We're having the meeting on the 26th.
I have one question.
Question.
Okay, my question is, when Mario came and spoke, was he given a time limit to speak?
He had the special meeting time limit.
And how long was that?
I don't know, what do you have, a half hour? What time did we schedule it? We scheduled it for 6:30? Yeah.
6:30 was a half an hour,
Yep.
30
I'll
minutes.
have to recheck it. Okay, thank you.
It did.
But it might have gone longer, might have gone an hour.
We're not limiting their
No,
time.
we're not limiting.
Limiting each case.
We were limiting their time.
Each case.
No.
Each case had 15
No, can you
minutes.
call on me? So when we sat in leadership, we agreed, 1, 2, 3, agreed that they would each get a certain time limit for their opening. Talk about whatever the hell you want to talk. Yep, 10 minutes each. Don't care what you talk about. We're going to sit back and listen. Then we're going to spend 10 minutes on each of the 7. I think we started with 5 and then decided 7 was a good, because we all had questions. They're going to talk about it. And then we decided they would each get, I don't know what it was, 5 or 10 minutes for their closing statement. That's it. Because I'm not going to go through 450 cases. I'm not going to stay there till 2 a.m. 1, 2, 3. We all agreed that that was the format because that would limit it to what was the most important, the most pertinent, keep on task. So we hear the relevant and important information, not stuff that had.
From us, though. We can't be asking a
No,
question.
that's why we said we weren't going to say. They're going to talk about it.
Of no councilman communication.
They're going to say, all right, the XYZ property on Emfield Street.
Yeah.
Let's talk about, this is why we did what we did. This is why you did what you did. I'm just sit back and listen because I'm not an assessor. I'm not a part of the BAA.
Exactly.
That's why I'm going to sit back and listen. And that was what we agreed
Everybody
on.
will have their chance to speak their piece.
We will have our chance at another meeting to discuss what we heard.
Yep.
All right. Can I finish?
But I do want, we're not going to be there for hours. There will be limits. Okay, and once again, I'm not, to that point, I'm not going to listen to 658 pages worth of cases. That we had a review. We spent a review. Everybody agreed upon the review. Matter of fact, Councilor Ludwig, you were the one who wanted the review. Okay, so the review was done. Everybody thought it was a fair, independent review. Everybody, right up here, everybody agreed to that. So let's move forward. There's the meeting on the 26th, 6 o'clock. Ken Nelson, Councilor Nelson.
Okay. So first thing for clarification, Everyone up here didn't agree to that because I wasn't up here, Bob. So I just want to clarify that.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you on that one. Okay, I apologize for
Next,
that.
since we're getting into special meetings, and I sat here and listened to a few people say that, WPC needs all these meetings, I know of about 5 or 6 pressing issues. I would like that leadership discuss at the next leadership about doing a special meeting just for WPC so we can resolve some of these issues that are so concerning, like wells, meter sizes, stuff like that. I'm not actually going to crawl in a sewer pipe to see when it's going to explode in front of the town hall, and I don't think there's any magical ball that's going to allow that to happen. But I think we need to have another special meeting, and I support that 100%. And then the only thing I'm going to say about the $1.4 million is, according to the mayor, we got $1.4 million extra now to spend, which is a great thing. But I say let's reduce the new mill rate by $0.5 mil and give the taxpayers back their $1.4 million. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. But I don't know if you can legally do that, but we will check that out. All right, we're going to be moving onward to Town Manager Report and Communications. Town Manager Ellen Zapusasu.
Yes, related to the PA 490, I did include in the packet the communication that we received from the Conservation Commission regarding their request for the replacement of open space funds, which I believe there's several people on the Town Council that agree with that. Also, the project and activity report is in this month's packet. And I also wanted to brief everyone that we have another revision to the tax assistance agreement with Fast Track Realty concerning Mass Mutual. The legal team is reviewing it now, and it will go out to the town council this coming week for your review. There's 2 sections that have been changed slightly from what you've seen in the previous iterations. At this point, we need to figure out if once there's a comfort level, if it can be scheduled for a special meeting or if we wait till July 17th. So that is coming up, and for the public who may be interested in looking at that, we'll have it available and may be able to place it on the town council, town manager's website probably sometime this week. In terms of some of the items that were talked about, the Fair Rent Commission, we do have a Fair Rent Commission, and we're very lucky that we do because we do not have to adhere to the July 1st deadline that many other communities within the state are scrambling to do. We did consult the handbook that was proffered by the state in order to update the existing ordinance, and the review that Attorney Serrato completed was simply to look at both versions and decide best practices. We are not eligible to do a regional board because we have a population in excess of 25,000, so that was not an option for us. CROG is actually doing that with some of the smaller Capital Region Council of Government communities. The commission that you currently have is dormant. There have been no appreciable complaints that have come in, especially in the time frame that I have been sitting in the seat, save one that came into the Department of Social Services and was deemed to be not appropriate for fair rent. It was more of a tenant-landlord dispute. That is not the purpose of the Fair Rent Commission, so they did not hear it. Recently, Cheryl Eckenroth in my office and I have gone through the names of the people who were associated with the dormant commission, and I have sent them emails asking if there is still interest on their behalf to continue to serve, because they're the ones that are already named. There's also several vacancies. Once we ascertain, and I just checked my email, I have received responses from most of them. Once we know what the people who are on the list are interested in doing, we look at the party balance, because that is a state law requirement. We will then look at the applications that have come in to see what names we will be putting forward to the town council. I do have some concerns in terms of how we're attaching this. It needs staff support. So right now, it is going to be within the Department of Social Services. That's where the complaints are going to come in. They will staff the commission. But I do think that there's some bridging that needs to be done in terms of helping landlords as well as helping tenants. So there may have to be a hybrid mix of some other staff people that will be attached to the Fair Rent Commission as well. But the good news is that we have interested people. Similarly, for water pollution control, I just wanted to spend a quick minute talking about that. Again, John Wilcox and I have been spending some time talking about this. And in terms of it, strictly in the lens of the budget, I wanted to remind the counselors who were here and those that are new that this is, it does go back years, and I'm going to reference 2018, and we're going to forward this out to you. But there is a memo from DEEP, and I think I referenced this during the budget workshops that you had. Here in Enfield, there were about 5 serious notices of violation to your water pollution control plant starting in 2009, 2010, 11, and 12. That was followed by a 2-day intensive inspection that happened in 2016. From that inspection, you were found to be in violation and deficient in over 17 categories. That is why you had to go to a user sewer charge, because you were practically under a consent agreement to do so. In order to do that, you had to do that in order to access the Clean Water Fund monies that were meant to upgrade the facility. This is a really complicated issue, and it's one that is not going to go away. I also think it's one similar to the education funding that we all have to have a better handle on. I do share some concerns about spinning this off to another commission as opposed to you sitting as the WPCA, because I'm just not sure that we can identify or we can encourage people who have expertise in the areas that we would need to come forward and serve on that commission. So that's something that we need to continue to discuss. But this is, there's a whole bunch of items that we look at for budgeting purposes. But first and foremost is the responsibility to provide that municipal service and do so in the best way possible and the best condition possible. So I'll be sending this email out to you so that you can all keep it in your WPC files and that we can take this up as a special agenda item in the near future. Attorney Talberg?
Yeah, if I may, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, just briefly, I'll be quick. I don't want to rebut point-by-point issues raised by the BAA, but my name was invoked a couple of times. I was called out by name, and I want to respond to 2 things so that the record is clear. First, about the invitation to the chair, it was suggested that somehow the invitation to a workshop was upsetting, and so I'll read to you, if I may. The email said, "Dear Chairman Tyler, the Town Council will conduct a workshop on June 26, 2023 at 6 p.m. at Town Hall to discuss the findings and recommendations that were presented in the independent review of the 2021 revaluation dated June 3, 2023. It's this report that's on the town website. The format will be a roundtable designed to find common ground between the BAA and the tax assessor and to discuss a positive path forward. This event is intended to be non-adversarial with the hope that Enfield can grow stronger from this experience and implement the best practices identified and recommended by the independent review. The BAA is cordially invited to attend and participate. Sincerely, Jim Talberg, Town Attorney." We sent that because in consultation with leadership through the town manager, at pages 73 through 72 of the report, there are 13 bullet points, very specific recommended best practices. The first couple are suggestions for the tax assessor of things that he could do that are best practices, and it goes on. And so the goal was to turn the page. The whole goal with this process was to have an exhaustive review of everything, 10,000 plus records, 15 interviews, and then conclude with best practices recommendations to present to the council, have a spirited debate, and move forward. And so I had heard that there was a meeting that Councilor Nelson attended with the assessor and the BAA, and that it was more of a mediation where they agreed on 4 or 5 things. So that's the concept. Okay, let's not come up here at public comment and start throwing rocks at each other. Let's sit in a room and talk about it. Cameras make people do play for cameras. So the thought was, let's have a workshop. We did the land use training with the land use boards in a workshop format. We quickly abandoned the PowerPoint and we just had a Q&A, and it was very productive, I would say. So that was the goal. We're not intending to offend anybody. We go out of our way to be courteous and diplomatic to everybody we encounter. That's all we were trying to do. Second issue I want to address, I heard a complaint that, quote, nobody asked us for anything at the BAA. And I can't let that stand. The appendix to the report was carefully selected, 475 pages. It's tabbed 1 through 20. This is the meat and potatoes. This is the important stuff that the findings are based upon. So you go right to tab 6, a letter of July 11, 2022, from the town attorney to counsel for the BAA. Quote, we are informed that the BAA possesses certain documents and records regarding its recent hearings, which the BAA has reportedly either failed or refused to provide to the town. They're public records. Could we please have them so they could be part of the review? That was July 11. I got a letter back July 14 from the chair. It's in the appendix, item 7. Dear Attorney Tallberg, your July 11, 2022 letter to Attorney Baird, Ray Enfield, raises many questions and issues. I suggest you take it to the Freedom of Information Commission to be resolved. Very truly, Chair of the BAA. In what world would the town attorney have to file an FOI complaint against a sub-agency of the town to get what are undisputedly town records? They're public records. Okay, that was July 14. Fast forward in the appendix, October 19, 3 months later, town attorney to the chair of the BAA, Dear Mr. Tyler, this will renew the request contained in my letter, dated July 11, quoting the statute and saying, we would like the documentary evidence that you have. In fact, the BAA had indicated that they possessed a wealth of information and data by way of documentary evidence, resources, and data. As your town attorney, I simply said under FOI, those are public records that belong to the town. In fact, that's corroborated when the town clerk went to the state librarian, and if you fast forward to tab 12, no, it's tab 11. There's an email of October 24, 2022 from Leanne, I think, Power, at the state librarian's office, in which she states, Dear Sheila, these records fall under M4-10 and should be retained for 1 year. If no court appeal pending, the tax assessor would be the custodian of the records. That makes sense, right? The BAA appeals. They fall under the tax assessor's office. And so I renewed my request that the BAA please give us those records. Well, it took even more time. Finally, November, we get a call, and Tupperware boxes show up at the town clerk's office. They were bait stamped. They're finally sent to Attorney Coppola. I think it was like 6,000 records, something like that. It was a big number. And so the BAA members couldn't be interviewed until the independent reviewer had access to all of those records, hand-scribbled stuff. There were, hundreds of tax appeals. And so they weren't interviewed until later because it took a tremendous amount of time, effort, energy, money to retrieve what are indisputably town records and get them in a format so that they could be reviewed. Okay, so they're now back where they belong, those records, but I think there were recent hearings, and we still need, it's my understanding, additional records that are public records. And so Attorney Coppola, in his report, he noted that there were certain areas where the BAA didn't, follow law, and that's one of them. It shouldn't be disputed, and they may be offended by that, but it's a violation of the FOI Act to have public records, and they're not under the control of the town. That's one example of about a dozen that Attorney Coppola cited where, in his interpretation of the statute, it was plain as the nose on your face that the BAA erred. And those are facts, and they're in the report. I would commend the reading of the report to anyone who hasn't seen it, especially the appendix. That's where the important stuff is. And so we look forward to having a spirited discussion about it. There's nothing we don't want to discuss, but we want to do it in a positive, civil manner so that we can move forward and learn from these lessons. Lesson number 1 is the BAA records belong to the town. They should be in the assessor's office. That's all I had, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much. Steve, do you have anything?
I have nothing tonight. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, moving on to Item 11, reports of special committees. Any reports that anybody wants to report on? Okay. All right, we'll move onward to item 12, PA 490, open space ordinance update and set a public hearing. Okay. Open space ordinance update and set public hearing. Okay, once again, be it resolved that the town of Enfield Town Council does hereby schedule a public hearing regarding the matter of the PA 490 open space ordinance to be held on July 17, 2023, to begin at 6:55 p.m. in the council chambers of the Enfield Town Hall, which is located at 820 Enfield Street, Enfield, Connecticut 06082, in order to receive public comment. Date prepared 6/15/2023. Date prepared by the town manager.
So moved.
Deputy Mayor Sakala and seconded by Councilor Mangini. Any discussion on this? Sheila, roll call.
Counselor Hopkins.
4.
Counselor Ledwick.
4.
Counselor Mangini. 4. Counselor Nelson. 4. Counselor Pisner.
4.
Counselor Ungary.
4.
Deputy Mayor Sakala.
4.
Mayor Corsati.
4.
Counselor Despard.
4.
9 members in favor and none against.
Okay, next, under consent agenda, these two consent items are the end of the year transfers that we typically see at the end of the fiscal year. We've talked about spiraling costs of waste management, and we actually have a bid waiver coming up next to lock us in for this expense. The other one is for vehicle supplies. Does anyone need to remove either one of these? Hearing none. All in favor to approve the consent agenda, raise your hand. We have all in favor, unanimous. Okay. All right. Consent agenda 2. All right, moving. There are no town council appointments. Once again, we have a large number of vacancies that we need to fill. We'd like to ask the council again to recruit people who you think would be a good fit. And I believe there's a press release and social media planned for this as well. All right. Next, the item C and D, the next two bid waivers are necessary since there are a few viable alternatives within the waste management world. Okay, so item C, discussion resolution. This is a request for a bid waiver for the disposal and processing of municipal solid waste and recycling. The resolution reads, the town of Enfield generates approximately 14,500 tons of municipal solid waste and 3,500 tons of household recycling each year. F&G Recycling LLC has been the town's processor since 2012 and has provided reliable and efficient service. Public Works has researched the offer in the local market and have determined that F&G Recycling LLC's offer is reasonable given current market conditions and that there are no other viable vendors in our market. Whereas the town of Enfield, generates 14,500 tons of municipal solid waste, 3,500 tons of household recycling each year, whereas the town has utilized F&G Recycling for processing of said municipal solid waste and recycling since 2012, and whereas F&G Recycling LLC has provided reliable and efficient service, whereas the Department of Public Works has determined that there is no alternative providers with the capacity to process the town's municipal solid waste and recycling. Therefore, be it resolved that the Town Council does hereby find, based on the foregoing compelling public interest, in accordance with Chapter 5, Section 8D, it is therefore against the best interest of the town to solicit bids for municipal solid waste and recycling services. Date prepared 6/9/2023, prepared by Donald Nunes, Director of Public Works.
So moved.
Councilor Mangini.
Second.
And by Deputy Mayor Sakala. Any discussion on item C? Sheila, roll call.
Counselor Hopkins.
4.
Counselor Ludwig.
4.
Counselor Mangini.
4.
Counselor Nelson.
4.
Counselor Pisner.
4.
Counselor Ungary.
4.
Deputy Mayor Sakala.
4.
Mayor Crisati.
4.
And Counselor Despard.
4.
9 in favor, none against.
Item D, the request for a bid waiver for sludge disposal services at the Enfield Water Pollution Control Facility. Whereas the Enfield Water Pollution Control Facility generates approximately 1,300 dry tons of sludge each year, and whereas the town has utilized the Metropolitan District Commission for disposal of said sludge for at least the last 10 years, and whereas the MDC has provided reliable and efficient service, whereas the WPCF has determined that there are no alternative nearby facilities with the capacity to process the town's sludge. Date prepared 6/16/2023, prepared by Donald Nunes, Director of Public Works.
So moved.
Councilor Nelson is seconded by Councilor Mangini. Any discussion? Councilor Ludwig.
To the Mayor, Town Manager, keep me honest here. I thought, how long's the contract extension, and do we have an idea what the cost is? I thought I was reading that they weren't going to be doing this much longer. Maybe I'm wrong, MDC, and that they were driving a pretty big increase.
Donald sent me information on this, and his note says that the dry ton increase for the MDC is $10, this contract. The fiscal year '22 rate was $365. It will be $375 for fiscal year '23. It's by dry ton after
Right.
it's been incinerated.
How long, is it for year to year? Is it evergreen every year, or is it a 3-year contract?
I don't know, do you know, Jen?
And again, I know so, what's the other town eventually, because the state, I guess, you know, when you say this, but is other municipalities going to bond together at some point to force the state to do something here? Because when there's an only game in town, I know there are some other municipalities that think got hit harder than this, I believe.
Yes, there's at least 2 initiatives that I can speak to. One is directly out of DEEP.
Yeah.
It's the Solid Waste Management Work Group. And then our CROG, Capital Region Council of Governments, is putting together a Central Connecticut Solid Waste Authority that we are going to be participating in, just to see how that goes. It's actually been something that is on the books with CROG, but they haven't activated it. They're modeling it after the Housatonic model. So they just had their first meeting last week. They're putting stakeholders in place, and there'll be more information coming on that.
We're negotiating this every year with them, or are we locking in at a $10 increase? Do you know? You don't know? All right, fair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sheila, roll call.
Counselor Hopkins.
4.
Counselor Ludwig.
4.
Counselor Mangini.
4.
Counselor Nelson.
4.
Counselor Pisner.
4.
Counselor Ungary.
4.
Deputy Mayor Sakala.
4.
Mayor Crisati.
4.
And Counselor Despard.
4.
9 in favor, none against.
Okay, item E, as we discussed at our meeting, we're updating the Fair Rent Commission ordinance to reflect the new state mandate that goes into effect July 3rd. And it was requested that we keep the committee membership to have landlords and tenants, and that is the change that you're going to see in the draft. The resolution, or the subject here, 2022, the legislative passed Public Act 20-30 requiring each town to adopt a Fair Rent Commission ordinance in accordance with the Fair Rent Commission Act by July 1st, 2023. Enfield has had an ordinance since 1970, but the commission has not met in recent years. Over the course of the spring, staff and Attorney Serrato met to review the new legislation and recommending the revision of the current ordinance to reflect the new state language provisions, the existing ordinance, proposed ordinance with changes that are attached. Date prepared 6/15/2023, prepared by the town manager.
So moved.
Second.
Councilor Mangini, and second by Deputy Mayor Sakala. Any questions, any discussions? Councilor Pisner.
So we have the existing and we have what they want. We don't really have the completed new draft in front of us. Am I right or wrong? This is the same as we had last week, and there were some changes.
I think they're in red.
So the only thing we're changing that we talked to last year is we're still going to keep it at 5. I thought we were doing it at 7. I thought we were going back to the 7
No, I
members.
thought we were going to keep it at 5 and that we would have landlords and couple of tenants, couple of landlords, and one who.
Because originally it was at 7, and that's what I thought we discussed last meeting, was that we would keep it at 7. No?
I don't remember that at all.
There was a discussion. I don't know that there was.
No,
So we're going to
but-
settle on 5?
5, yes.
That's what we did.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, but it's in red there. Councilor Ludwig?
You all set? Again, I appreciate the changes to my suggestion. And again, I hate to say, I like the original one written the way it is. It's more detailed. And I agree with the individual who spoke tonight that maybe we just update the state and go to, if you want to go to 5, that's fine. But I think, I like the way the original one is written. It's much more detailed, much more laid out. And if we just simply have to update, to go to 5 members, again, still fair rent, fairly represented by 2 landlords, 2 tenants, and 1 individual, I would rather do that than rewrite an ordinance that, I'm just sorry, it's too vague in some instances. And for me, I like it laid out, because when the folks aren't around, it's pretty detailed. I mean, I appreciate the changes, because I asked for them. So I'm not, I don't know how to say this. I would like to actually see the original and then just update it for the state law if it's that simple. Maybe have Mark take a look at it, but sorry, I think the original is written better.
I do too.
I think it's more detailed and it spells everything out.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Councilor Nelson?
Okay, I agree with Councilman Ludwig, and also I have a very, very hard time with this language. Is hereby established a fair rent commission for the purpose of controlling and eliminating excessive rental charges for housing and accommodations within the town of Enfield. The tax increase that was just passed here a couple weeks ago, if it's passed on to a tenant or split up between the tenants in a building, is an excessive rent increase. And you would be able to stop the landlords from passing that through to the tenants. Landlords are business owners, and they need to make a profit. And if they don't make a profit, we see properties get run down. Granted, not all landlords run their properties down because they're not making money. Some of them just bleed them dry and don't take care of their properties. So again, a tenant has a choice. They can move. Just like if you're at a job and you get a new job description you don't like, you can leave. If you don't get the raise you like, you can leave. Who are we to tell a landlord they cannot increase the rent? Especially, you look at the cost of real estate from just 2 years ago to today. A 4-family home. If I sold my 4-family house that I bought 30 years ago to Councilman Hopkins, and he now has to cover a mortgage 10 times whatever I ever had, he has to increase the rents to make it feasible for him. This is government intrusion at its finest. I don't support this. Every landlord has a right to run the business they want to. So I do not support it. I say we stay with the original document. I'm okay with dropping it to 5 members because of the lack of volunteers. And I do like the 2 landlords, 2 tenants, and 1 resident. I'm good with that. But any other changes, I'm not good with. Thank you.
Councilor Hopkins, and then Councilor Desper.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just very briefly, I'm glad that there is some interest in bipartisanship and compromise here. To Councilor Nelson's point or question or matter of discussion, Councilor Nelson, you might have a disagreement with just the function of a fair rent commission, and that's fine if you do. I think it's important because at a certain point, housing is incredibly important for our community, for our nation, for our state. If you don't have a place to live, it's affordable, you're going to be on the street. Obviously, we don't want that here in town. I don't think the scope of the Fair Rent Commission is as big as you might be imagining it, or other folks. I think it's good to have this as a check. If someone is concerned that their rent is excessive, to file an application, and then the commission will fairly look at that. I'm willing to compromise and agree on the 2 landlords, 2 tenants, 1 person. I previously thought that might be a little cumbersome for the committee. But I think they're going to look at this fairly. There are some rules that they have to follow. It can't just be completely up to interpretation. And I'd like to ask Attorney Tallberg if he has thoughts on what the boundaries of what the boundaries are here. That might be helpful. Sorry, I caught you.
Where's the basement lawyer when you need him? It's 10:10. Attorney Serrato had been dealing with this. I think if you wanted to, well, there's 2 issues. One, I think the offensive language is in the original ordinance already. It is. So I don't know that you can just amend it right here by amending this language, but it's already in the ordinance. And as I recall, last time we had to repeal an ordinance, we had to go through the hoopla of a public hearing and all that. So that wasn't your question, though.
No, my question was really, and I know you were talking, so I caught you at a bad moment here, but the question is, what are the boundaries of interpretation for the committee? They can't simply, decide that $1,000 a month is too excessive, $1 is too excessive. What are the boundaries?
Being a municipal agency, their power is constrained by whatever the authorizing statute is, and we're just looking at the authorizing statute, 7-148B, and it doesn't include this offensive language about controlling. But I mean that's so anyway. To the point where, I mean, you already had, to the gentleman's point that we already have an ordinance. I'd have to consult with Attorney Serrato, who had reviewed this more carefully and looked at other fair rent ordinances. It may be that we're okay with the existing one. But I'm just not sure that we're going to answer this question tonight. And it sounds like the language that you want to change, you can't change because it's already in the ordinance. So I'm not sure, quite frankly, what to do.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, that might make the question or concern moot, given that the language isn't in there. If not, that's okay. I'm confident that there are some guardrails to this. I don't think, let's imagine that it's the state legislature intended that, $5 is excessive. It can't go that far. If that's what they intended, and or if there's just nothing limiting it currently, it's an easy challenge, and I'm sure there's a landlord association out there that would bring that challenge. I don't know the law enough to comment on that, but I'm confident that the guardrails are there. Thank you.
Yeah, and the bottom line is the current Fair Rent Commission that we have that has been inactive is going to be constrained by state law. So, Councilor Nelson, I think your concerns would be addressed. They're only going to be allowed to do what state law allows them, and they're going to be allowed to do whatever state law allows them.
I did find something that might be of interest to the council. I pulled up the toolkit that we used when we were going through and reviewing existing and what the state was calling for. Basically, it looks like it's mostly just a state law that is now mandating fair rent commissions. 24 towns in Connecticut already had one, including Enfield. So this is now codifying it. They do talk about the fact that these commissions are now empowered to stop or delay unconscionable rent increase and also to limit rent to a fair level when there are health or safety violations. So we had a lot of conversation about that in regard to our Troubled Properties Committee, because we've unfortunately been in a lot of apartments and units that are they're not providing safe and sanitary housing for residents. So it appears that there's an interplay between that and what we're seeing as the housing crisis, so that there can't be an unfair advantage with landlords. But at this point, it looks like it's really just the mandate component. I can skim through this a little bit more while we talk, but it literally just requires each town with a population greater than 25,000 to adopt a Fair Rent Commission ordinance in accordance with the Fair Rent Commission Act, which is 7-148B through F.
Councilor Despard.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I'm certainly in favor of this. It's, it was really great to see some people show up tonight and volunteer to be on it. I think the whole idea is for things to be fair. And I especially with the investment that we're making downtown. We're trying to clean things up. We have a great blight committee. This just seems to be the next step there, and I'm totally behind it. And again, really excited to see some people step up tonight and say that they would be willing to volunteer for this committee. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Sheila, roll call.
Counselor Hopkins.
For.
Counselor Ludwig.
Against.
Counselor Mangini.
For.
Counselor Nelson.
Against.
Counselor Pisner.
Against.
Counselor Ungary.
Against.
Deputy Mayor Sakala.
For.
Mayor Corsati.
For.
Counselor Despard.
For.
5 members in favor and 4 against.
Okay. Item F. This next item is another motion from an earlier public hearing concerning the Neighborhood Assistance Act. This is item F. 7. And be it resolved that the Enfield town manager or her designee is hereby authorized to submit 3 proposed program applications for the Hazardville Institute Conservative Society and the Opera House Players. And then I think there's 2 for the Opera House Players to the State of Connecticut Department of Revenue Services under the provision of the Neighborhood Assistance Act, and to approve any donations received as a result of this application. Date prepared 6/8/2023, prepared by the Office of Economic and Community Development. Councilor Nelson, and a second by Deputy Mayor Sakala. Any discussion on this? I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Sheila, roll call.
Counselor Hopkins.
For.
Counselor Ludwig.
For.
Counselor Mangini.
For.
Counselor Nelson. For. Counselor Pisner. For. Counselor Ungary.
For.
Deputy Mayor Sakala.
For.
Mayor Corsati.
4.
And Counselor Despard.
For.
9 in favor and none against.
Okay, thank you. Item G, once again, it's really pretty cool to go down to the newly renovated building over here on North Main Street, Ronnie Salas's properties, and see the new tenants and the new facade that's been put up over there. And this is his tax assessment agreement that was approved by the TIF committee and forwarded to us. So this is just to get our blessing. Be it resolved that the town manager, Ellen Zapusasu, is empowered to enter into a tax assessment agreement subject to the review or approval by the town attorney in the name of and on behalf of the town of Enfield with 9 North Main Street LLC. Date prepared 6/9/2023, prepared by the Office of Economic and Community Development.
So moved.
Councilor Nelson, and second by Councilor Mangini. Any discussion on this? Councilor Ludwig.
Through the mayor, town manager, remind me, the value above the fixed assessment, 50% goes to the, right, is tax, remind me how, right, 50%, or is it, was we 60/40? I couldn't remember what we passed. Town gets portion of it, and then where's the other money going? Where is it? Is it in a town fund?
It's in a revenue fund.
All right, there you go, revenue, right? So, but, and then if it's sitting there, so it's about 200 grand or 100 grand, say 50, just use round numbers, say 50 grand goes into the general fund, 50 grand goes into the special revenue fund. Now, is that open to every other business in that TIF district? Remind me?
It could be
TIF.
used for that, or
Right.
it could also be used to fund public improvements within the TIF district, if I recall correctly,
So it could either be used by the town and/or business, right?
for
If I remember-
designated activity within the TIF district.
And they would have, so we would have to, so I just want to make sure, I'm trying to remember, it's been a while since we talked about this. That we would have to disclose, obviously, if we're going to use, so say we use the money to paddle boats on a thing, for example. Okay, it would come out of that fund. So dumb question, tax-wise, how does that benefit the, you know what I mean? I'm just trying to remember, I'm sorry to put you in, so I can't remember these, we had these conversations 5 years ago.
Can I phone a friend?
Yeah, no worries. You can get back to me. And then, and so now, last question. How long's the fixed period? Is it 10 years? Did we do? John, sorry.
All individual, I thought.
Is it?
Yeah,
I think they're individual.
up to, not to exceed.
Sorry, John.
It should cover 5 fiscal years, Mike.
Was it 5? I can't remember.
Yep. It says it right in here, 5 years.
This
Go
one's
ahead,
5,
Dave.
yeah.
Yep.
So the split is 50/50.
Is it? Okay.
So increases in valuations it's 50% of the increase in valuation goes to the general fund. That just basically stays in our tax revenue. And then we transfer the 50% over to the TIF district fund. Okay. We are allowed to, there are certain requirements within the TIF district of what we are allowed to spend that money on. Usually it's capital improvements, or we're allowed to use it for credit enhancement agreements for individual.
So the money's already been collected, right? So they paid tax on that 386. And now, but we're going to now go back and reassess them for future years, correct? I just want to make sure I get the process down in my head.
Normally, yes, we would be. I mean, this is a credit. This is more of a normal tax abatement agreement. But yes, that is the case. So if their increase, if they were now valued at, they were originally 100,000 and they went to 200,000, we were going to tax them at the $200,000 assessment.
How much money do you know? Do you know how much we have in the special revenue fund from other? Is this the first one, or has there been other businesses who've sort of put into the TIF revenue fund?
We've talked about several different businesses. We've talked about we have a committee that has discussed several of these things. One of them is for the town to do intersection improvements.
Is this the first business that's taken advantage of it? I can't recall. I'm just saying. I can't recall. I know we talked about some credit enhancement agreements, and I thought they had. They had come through, but I'm not. I think it's important for people to understand that it's actually how it works, because then it opens it up, in theory, for someone else in the district who could use some of that money if they. I know there's a process and they have to apply for it, but that's the point of what we did. Instead of just taking the value of the use round number, $100,000 going into the general fund. There is some benefit to that TIF, in theory, that helps other businesses possibly.
That's correct.
Which maybe, hopefully, they take care of some improvements that they may, So I think that's just reminding, because it's been a while since we talked about this.
Yeah, they will now come up. Hopefully, we'll be meeting on other ones in the near future.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, John. Sheila, roll call.
Counselor Hopkins?
4.
Counselor Ludwig?
4.
Counselor Mangini?
4.
Counselor Nelson?
4.
Counselor Pisner?
4.
Counselor Ungary?
4.
Deputy Mayor Sakala? 4. Mayor Crissati?
4.
Counselor Despard?
4.
9 members in favor, none against.
Item H, discussion resolution authorizing the town manager to enter into an agreement with Data Cloud Solutions for mobile appraisal services. Be it resolved that in accordance with Chapter 6, Section 8F of the Town Charter, the following transfer is hereby made. Be it further resolved that the Enfield Town Council authorizes the town manager to enter into an agreement with Walpert, Inc., DBA Data Cloud Solutions for mobile assessment software. From assessment and revenue collection, other professional services, $21,000, to assessment and revenue collection, $21,000 to software.
So moved.
Councilor Nelson, and a second by Councilor Mangini. Any discussion on this? Yes.
Through the mayor to the town manager, you would, I believe it was you thought this was for record storage and stuff like that. And I did a little research on it, and I believe this is not for record storage, but this is for the big eye in the sky to look in our yards. It's, so they can use aerial photos and drones and stuff like.
No, this is software that's on their tablets so that they can connect into Vision and into the databases and make real-time notes when they're in the field. So when they're at your house and they realize that you've put in a pool, 2 sheds, and a garage and never pulled permits, they can enter that data without taking hand notes, going back to the office, then entering, and all of that. It's a modernization step while they're in the field. You're thinking of Eagle Pick, which is the aerial contract.
But, I mean, iPads and everything that they carry with them are all Wi-Fi.
This is the access to get into Vision Government Solutions and the real estate database for while they're in the field. It's the first bullet point. Because when we had that conversation, I went back and checked because I wasn't familiar with Woolpert.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sheila, roll call.
Counselor Hopkins.
4.
Counselor Ludwig.
4.
Counselor Mangini.
4.
Counselor Nelson.
4.
Counselor Pisner.
4.
Counselor Ungary.
4.
Deputy Mayor Sakala. 4. Mayor Crisati.
4.
Counselor Despard.
4.
9 in favor and none against.
All right, item I. This next one is a referral from the Blight Review Committee that met last week. And this is a discussion resolution authorizing the waiver of property maintenance fines for 261 Brainerd Road, Enfield, Connecticut. Be it resolved that the Enfield Town Council does hereby authorize the waiver of property maintenance fines for 261 Brainerd Road that total $88,449. Now therefore be it resolved that the Enfield Town Council does hereby authorize the town manager to sign a release of lien for the property maintenance lien recorded December 2nd, 2021 at volume 2822, page 1195 in the Enfield Land Records, date prepared 6/15/2023, prepared by the Office of Economic and Community Development. And
So moved.
Councilor Nelson, and second by Deputy Mayor Sakala. Discussion. Councilor Nelson.
So in the Blight meeting, we had a discussion with this, and, you know, before the meeting started, I had a conversation with the chair, and I wish he was here, but he's not. And, you know, he talked about how, you know, we got to start covering our costs and everything else. And, you know, we got to stop forgiving all these fines. And this one came in, and this gentleman has a very good story to go with it. And I don't even like to use the word story because that minimizes the situation here. But we're the town, and this house has been a problem property for 20 plus years. It's on the corner of Brainerd Road and George Washington. And it was a problem when I lived over on Tabor Road 20 years ago. So he inherits the house. His dad passes away. He inherits the house. No mortgage, nothing, free and clear, $300,000+ house. And he wants us to forgive the $88,000 that's owed to the town of Enfield. And I compromised down to $5,000 to cover the town's costs, because everybody in that neighborhood has had to live with this house for 20 years. And I'm sorry, there's a beneficiary who is gaining the reward of this property of $300,000, free and clear. He could have helped take care of the property over the last 20 years and protected his inheritance. Now, everybody has stories why they didn't do it or this or that, but my point is it's not fair that taxpayers have to pay for the town staff and everything we've done going after this property again and again and again. So I'm asking the council to agree to a $5,000 fine, which could be paid over the next 2 years as long as the property stays in compliance. That's what the Blight Commission is set for, to try to clean up these properties and make sure they stay clean. $5,000 out of $88,000, I think that's a very, very fair compromise. Keep your lawn cut, keep the house clean, everybody wins.
Councilor Despard.
Question, Councilor Nelson, if it's okay.
Sure.
How did the Blight Committee vote?
The Blight Committee voted to eliminate all fines.
Right.
Except, obviously, it was 3-1.
Okay, gotcha. And I hear what you're saying. I do. I think that, personally, I think that it makes sense. But I mean, we have, waived quite a few for people before. It sounds like in this case, you could make an argument that he did us a favor and cleaned up a 20-year eyesore, right? I'm not going to make a habit. I get your point, and I think you make a good argument, but I'm not going to make the habit of going against the decision of our subcommittees. So I will support it.
Councilor Hopkins?
My understanding of the function of the Blight Review Committee is to fine properties until they come back into compliance. I'm glad that this one is in compliance. However, I do understand Councilor Nelson's concern that residents near this property were frustrated and annoyed by this blight, and I get that. But I don't think that's the function of this committee. Maybe the council considers some kind of other thing, but I think it's settled currently, and I would vote for this. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments?
Is it a formal motion, Councilor Nelson, to make is that an amendment?
Yeah, I make a motion that we amend that to $5,000 instead of nothing.
I will second that, and just I guess I'll second it. I have a question. I'll second that amendment.
Okay, so there's an amendment on the floor that you want to $5,000
paid over 2 years.
Paid over 2 years, and a second by Councilor Ludwig.
As long as the property stays in compliance.
As long as the property stays in compliance.
Through the
all right, discussion.
Through the mayor to the mayor. Did we do any cleaning liens, or do we have any idea? Because I agree that property's been in not compliance for a long time. And the point, and again, when we set up the Blight Committee back a few years ago, it wasn't just, yes, it's to get the folks back into compliance, but also recognize the town had a cost in some of this. So it wasn't just every single time waive, every single fine, because there is a cost to the town. Our staff went out there, they deal, I know you see them, we send you complaints on properties, it takes a lot of your time. No, it takes a lot of the staff's time. And again, I think it's fair to have some, especially, especially, so if the property went to a tax sale, they would have obviously wouldn't buy, you'd have to pay something, maybe not, you wouldn't get $300,000, but you'd have to pay something for it. Good for the individual to inherit it. But I agree, that's gets to my point of sometimes when it comes to, we had all these discussions about evaluation. The homeowner that takes care of the property, the only benefit they get is they sell their house or they take on more debt by refinancing. The homeowner that doesn't still gets the benefit of the homeowners taking care of their property, and causes town, because they're going to call in and say, okay, they haven't, I know that property's been in tough shape. So I agree, there is a cost to the town. When I mean that, the taxpayer and to staff who've had to go out there. And I think $5,000 is fair when it's been close to almost $100,000 in fines. So it wasn't like it was just out of compliance a month or two. It was out of compliance for a while.
Well, I will defer to Councilor Nelson, who was at the meeting, about whether we actually went out and did any cutting of the because it doesn't appear. Usually when we do, Christie will include it in the resolution. This was a violation pertaining to a damaged fence, overgrown shrubs, and grass over 12 inches. I will tell you that when I first came here and became involved with this and tried to revamp this, this is a flawed process. This is not an $88,000 violation, and it will get thrown out in court if he challenges it. We should not be doing this and multiplying fines every day, especially when it involves a complex family story, mental health, deceased parents, everything else. So I just don't know that we had any costs other than our staff going out and taking pictures.
Fair. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I just have one comment in regard to that. And I see everybody's point. I see Councilor Nelson's point in regard to this. In reading through here, we have not gone out to that property. And, these are all tough situations, and, I don't really know the the history. I know where the property is. But, if he has made a commitment that he's going to, do some work to the property, get this property up to standard and move forward with everything, I'm fine with the way things are. So, go ahead.
So just, Councilor Santinella did give me a little bit of background here. So this guy, he inherited the house. Within 90 days of inherited the house, he got this thing in compliance. And apparently, he paid people to help him doing that. And apparently, he doesn't have a lot of money. So he still owes some people that came and helped him get him into compliance. So I don't think this is a situation where this guy's a high roller. And I think he worked his tail off to get into compliance, and he did it fast. So.
All right, thank you. Councilor Ungar.
Having served on Blight for a couple years, we always said that our committee was not there to make money for the town. The project is to get the town cleaned up. And unless I know the personal history, maybe this guy lived in, out of the country or something, and he wasn't able to come. So I always appreciated the background history. And so the way it comes to us, I tend to trust what Blight recommends. So if Blight recommends to forgive it, then I would support that. But I understand what you're saying, too.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Nelson.
Okay, so everybody in TV land who's watching this right now, what they're telling you is you don't have to cut your lawn. You don't have to take care of your property. Because the day comes you sell your house or you pass away and it gets inherited, they're just going to forgive the fines. So the people on Burnham who are living next to that house that has all those fines on it, you hear exactly why that house has never been cleaned up and how the town's just going to forgive the fines. Forget about the 50 neighbors who have to deal with this or have to cut the lawns themselves. This is why. Because there's no teeth in this ordinance. Just forgive the fines. Either pass away or sell the house, and who cares? So I'm being told right now I don't have to cut my lawn for 20 years. I can get $1 million in fines from the town, even clean and lean it. And then I got to pay back a couple $1,000, and I'm done. That's what you're hearing right now. It's absurd. Why even have a blight committee? Because that's exactly what happened. 20 years of blight. The gentleman inherited the house from his family. The family should be there to protect their investment. I'm sorry, that's how it is. If I knew I was inheriting my parents' house, even if I wasn't, I'd be over there helping my parents cut the lawn. That's what family does, especially when you end up with the property.
Councilor Hopkins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think that's completely wrong. Having served on Blight, the town staff looking at these properties and the committee members themselves, both the councilors and the volunteer residents, take this stuff very seriously. I think there's a fair concern that the amount of fines might need to be looked at, some things might need to be tinkered on, as well as whether the town is foreclosing on properties at an appropriate rate. But it's wrong to say that. I understand it might be facetious, but I don't think it's a good thing to undermine one of our most important committees in town at a time when it is on an upward trajectory to address real problems across the town. That's all I have to say about that. I think that's wrong, and I think they do a good job.
Okay. At this point, we do have to vote on the motion, on the amendment. Okay. So all in favor? And against? So 3 in favor, 6 against, motion fails. Amendment fails. I have motion on the brain here. Roll call, Sheila. Thank you.
Councilor Hopkins?
4.
Councilor Ludwig?
4.
Councilor Mangini?
Against.
Councilor Nelson? Councilor Pisner? Councilor Ungary?
4.
Deputy Mayor Sakala?
4.
Mayor Crisati?
4.
And Councilor Despard?
4.
That's 6 in favor and 3 against.
Okay. Item 14, any other business to come or public communications? None.
Empty.
Counselor? None. Adjournment, motion to adjourn. Okay, Counselor Nelson and a second by Counselor Ungary. All in favor? Unanimous. Good night, everyone.